Welcome to me, where suspenseful, thrilling, and mysterious stories will draw you into a world where the lines between reality and fantasy seem to blur. When the night falls, when all the sounds gradually quiet down, leaving only your own heartbeat and breathing, that's when these stories begin. Tensions, unsolved mysteries, moments that will make you hold your breath in fear or curiosity, all are waiting for you ahead. Find a comfortable seat, dim the lights, and let this sound guide you on a journey that is not for the faint of heart. I want each of you to leave a comment sharing where you are in the world. And if you are enjoying the episodes, don't forget to give a like and subscribe to the channel now. Relax. Are you ready? If so, join me in the first story right now. The Last Phone Call. Mom! Finally! I thought our weekly calls from the station were pre-scheduled. I was worried. Hey, sweetie. Sorry about that. Things have been a bit chaotic up here. Solar radiation's been causing issues with communications. You usually call on Sunday. It's Wednesday. You know how space is. Unpredictable. The ionosphere is wreaking havoc on everything up here. It took me a while to get through with the available channels. Restricted, I guess. I hadn't heard about a radiation storm. Anyway, how's the research going? Can't complain. How's school? Weird. I've noticed a lot of strange stuff happening lately. For example, we were setting up the club telescopes in the park on Monday when some official showed up. He said he was with the Space Weather Center. Told Mr. Hayes they were expecting a massive solar flare and had to shut down all civilian solar observations. Said they didn't want any students getting blinded if it happened during observation. Your comms problem isn't related, is it? Could be. The SWC must have seen something. There might be. Wait, that's completely wrong. And Mr. Hayes knows it. Solar filters protect our eyes during normal observation. And even the big flares are not that bright at optical wavelengths. Plus, if there really was a huge, dangerous flare coming, they'd have issued a public warning. The whole thing makes no sense. Huh. Maybe the official was simplifying the explanation, or didn't fully understand. For our astronomy club? Come on, Mom. We're smarter than that. We're all AP students. Mr. Hayes was confused too. I don't think he bought it either. Sarah, why would they bother sending someone in person to a small astronomy club meetup in the park? Why didn't they just send an email warning to the school? Or just issue a general public notice? This guy showed up flashing credentials, telling us to pack it in immediately. It makes no sense. I don't know. Maybe they weren't sure you'd get it in time. And Dad? Mom, I'm worried about him. He barely sleeps. I hear him pacing at night. Yesterday morning, I found him asleep at the kitchen table, still in his work clothes. Well, you know your dad. He's just under a lot of pressure, more than usual lately, always taking his work too seriously. So, how's that physics project you were telling me about? It's going good, Mom. I'll make an A, like always. But Dad, he let it slip They're updating deep space tracking systems. Yeah, I heard that too. He never was good at keeping secrets. All of them? At once? On emergency status? Who told you it was emergency status? No one. I overheard him on the phone. You shouldn't eavesdrop. I just want to know what's going on. Just tell me. I'm doing my best, sweetie. But you're not telling me everything. Look, honey, you know I can't always tell you everything. So, let's talk about your birthday coming up. 17. Wow. I'm sorry I won't be there. I hear Aunt Paula and your dad have something special planned. Forget my birthday. Something's wrong. The NASA website's been down for days. Maintenance, they say. These things happen. They're probably just doing upgrades or fixing a server issue. During the same week that all the major observatories stopped updating their websites, Sarah, and why did Aunt Paula buy extra supplies? What do you mean? I dropped by after school yesterday. She was carrying in boxes of food for her storm shelter, just in case, she said. She also mentioned that you called her yesterday. I've been trying to reach you for the last 3 days. You found time to call her, but didn't call me. Keep Aunt Paula's phone number handy. It's always nice to have someone to depend on, just in case. Mom, stop. Something's happening. Just tell me. Nothing's happening. We're just conducting routine research. Then explain the launches. You know, I track this stuff for the astronomy club. What? 5 days ago. China, Russia, and NASA all launched within hours of each other. No warnings, no announcements. All classified payloads at the same time. Honey, it's likely just coincidence. Sometimes agencies coordinate for unrelated reasons. You know, NASA likes to cooperate with other agencies. I might have believed that, but amateur astronomers tracked 2 of the rockets, posted the trajectory data online. Then their data disappeared. And now those same astronomers aren't responding to anyone. They've gone dark. You really need to stop reading conspiracy theories online. These aren't theories. I've seen the videos from people who live near the launch sites. Those have been taken down, too. I checked the trajectories myself. They're all going to the ISS, aren't they? And why did the ISS change orbit? Sarah, NASA's. It's complicated. Just some specialized equipment and for our research. Okay? The Russians are sending up new cosmonauts. The ISS is just performing a standard maneuver, Sarah. Space debris is unpredictable. You know how it is. Nothing you need to worry about. Really? China finally claimed it was a weather satellite launch? Why did Russia lie in their announcement today? They said it was engine testing. And why hasn't NASA said something? These things are complicated. No one launches secret missions in perfect sync by accident, Mom. Remember when you taught me about Occam's razor? Sarah and the astronomy forums are going crazy about something near Jupiter. But the posts keep disappearing. Internet hoaxes. Don't believe everything you read online. No? No, it's not. Dad got a call late last night. It woke me up. I got up and saw him make several calls. He looked rattled. Then he told me this morning that he needs to leave for a few days. For work. So, Mom, I couldn't help but overhear Dad's side of the call. He said something about a spacecraft and a collision course. Mom? Sarah, it's not what you think. These conversations are never straightforward. Your dad deals with classified projects all the time. You should get some sleep, honey. It's late there. He's never acted like this. What's on a collision course? Sarah, please, I can't talk about this right now. All those launches, the spacecraft, the deleted information. It's too much to be a coincidence. They're hiding something, Mom. And you know, Sarah, it's just... Stop, okay? You're not... Mom, are you preparing for something? It's not just research, is it? I can't have this conversation. The Chinese, the Russians, NASA, the ISS, you're all working together. In secret. Sarah, quit it. Now. You're not studying anything. You're trying to stop something. Sarah, I can't do this. I have to go. How big is it? How big? What? The asteroid. That's what it is, isn't it? That's why all the telescopes are shut down. Why everything's classified. You don't want people to panic. Mom, you always were too smart for your own good. How bad? I have to go. Mom, please, don't tell anyone about this call. What? I mean it. It's important. Promise me. I promise. I love you, Sarah. More than anything. Always remember that. Okay? No matter what. Mom, are you going to be on that spacecraft? Mom, please tell me you're not. Be strong, Sarah. Like I know you can. Remember how much I love you. And know that I'm doing everything I can to come back to you. And stay close to Aunt Paula. Just in case. Mom, just be careful and come home soon. Mom, this call has been terminated. I love you too. Stay safe. Broken statements. I've said too much. It's time for you to go. Detective Foster sneaked a weary glance at her partner, Detective Daniels, before casting a stern expression to the woman they questioned. You haven't said much at all, the detective countered. The living room grew warmer by the minute as the blazing sun rose higher into the sky. It had to be noon by now, and their small town was in the middle of a heat wave. Crime was in short supply, thankfully, and these days, most of the calls they received were from the elderly asking for help to set up their air conditioners. This woman did not have any cool air circulating her home. Her windows were open, letting the stiff, warm air sit like an unwelcome guest. The woman crossed her arms, twisting her head abruptly away from the officers. I can't say much more than I already told you. You're asking too many questions. Foster snapped her notepad shut, fighting the urge to roll her eyes. She turned her back on them to roam the living space. As she walked further away, she heard Daniels scoff We're asking questions to help you, and I've already told you my answers to those questions. Barely, the woman gasped. I don't like your attitude. Foster made her way into the kitchen as the bickering voices died down in the distance. Not that it was a large house, but she was more focused on looking around while the homeowner was distracted. Normally, she didn't condone her partner arguing with the victim, but sometimes it came in handy as a nice diversion. Earlier that day, the department had received a call from the neighbor claiming she heard breaking glass and then shouting. While on the phone, she noted the shouting had died down and all was quiet. Still, the woman's nerves were shaken and begged for someone to come over and check it out. First, the detectives visited the neighbor, but they didn't get any new information out of her. She was too afraid to even open the door for the officers. She had spoken to them through a crack in a window, motioning to the house next door. Foster made her way to the house first, while Daniels stayed behind to calm the poor lady down some. Foster had to knock on the door twice before the homeowner finally answered. Her name was Marianne Jules, and Foster guessed her to be in her mid to late 40s. She wore silk blouses, black dress pants, and was almost always in 3-inch heels when out around town. A string of pearls dressed her skinny neck that she always fiddled with. There was no wedding band on her finger, and as far as Foster was concerned, the woman didn't have any close family, nor did she know anyone in town before arriving. She lived alone and had recently moved here within the past 6 months. Marianne didn't make much of an effort to get to know the townspeople, and not everyone was eager to welcome her, Foster included. She remained polite, of course, but she was skeptical of visitors, especially visitors who stayed. Foster grew up in Willow's Landing, and over time, she realized one thing everyone here had in common. Every individual who made up the population here was born and raised in this small town. Sure, the occasional tourist came through, but no one ever moved to Willow's Landing, nor did anyone born here ever move out. When Marianne had finally answered the door, she was less than pleasant to see an officer standing on her front porch. She remained standoffish, but gave the detectives enough information for them to figure out the glass shattering the neighbor had heard was a window breaking. Marianne admitted someone broke into her house, which was enough for them to enter the premises, but they couldn't get any more information out of her. Marianne acted scared, but beat around the bush when asked why she didn't call the authorities herself. First, she thought it was her imagination. Then, she changed her tune and claimed she wanted to check it out herself. Apparently, she has a cat hiding around the house somewhere, and suggested that maybe the feline had knocked over a vase. According to Marianne, it took her a while to discover the window because a 2-story condo is a lot of square footage to cover. It was tough for both detectives to remain impartial as they questioned her, But that was all they needed, for her to admit a window broke. How did the window break? Daniels had asked. Which window was it? Mind if we check it out? Foster had questioned. That was when Marianne stopped playing with the pearls on her neck and pressed the back of her hand to her forehead as though she were ready to faint. Claiming she had said too much, Foster sauntered through the kitchen, taking in the surroundings. It was pristine, almost as if Marianne had never used it before. Yet, a knife was missing from the butcher block on the counter by the sink. The dishwasher was open a crack, so maybe Marianne did cook and was simply a neat freak. Regardless, the detective made a mental note of the missing knife. Too obvious? Maybe, but Foster didn't have a good feeling about this woman. The window above the sink was still in one piece, which was the main reason Foster looked around the place, determined to find this broken window. She rounded the island in the middle of the room and exited through the back. It led to a hallway. To her left was a bedroom, and in front of her was a bathroom. The detective peered into both rooms, but the windows were still intact. She made her way down the hall, the voices of her partner and Marianne growing louder. They still argued, as Daniels tried to get more information out of the supposed victim. But Marianne had none of it. She kept scoffing in response, without using her words. Marianne acted like a child, and, as Foster re-entered the living room, she could see the impatience and swelling frustration written all over her partner's face. She was on the other side of the living room now, behind Marianne, who didn't seem to notice the detective's return. Or maybe she didn't notice the absence beforehand. In no attempt to relieve her partner, Foster locked eyes with her him. She gave a curt nod while pointing up. Daniels didn't answer, but turned his attention back to Marianne instead. Foster walked up the stairs to see what she could find on the second floor. At the top of the landing, Foster faced the second bathroom. It was clean, the window unbroken. To the right was another room that looked to be an office or study area. Like the rest of the house, it looked untouched. The window was open, but not broken. A tuxedo cat sunbathed on the windowsill. So the cat was real, after all. Foster turned around, the stairs to her left now. She could hear her partner spouting off something to Marianne, but she couldn't make out the words. It was only a matter of time before Marianne kicked them out, so Foster had to act fast. There was one room left in the house, straight down the hall. If there was no broken window in there, she didn't know what they were doing here. Quickening her pace, the detective poked her head into the room at the end of the hall, which looked like the primary bedroom, judging by the queen-sized bed. Bingo! The window above the vanity was shattered to bits. Foster stepped into the room, noticing a messy trail of glass from the window to the other side of the room. Halfway through the trail, the glass on the floor mixed with red spots on the beige carpet. The detective stepped to the left following the trail, before huffing out an exasperated sigh. On the other side of the bed, invisible from the doorway, lay the body of a man. Instinctively, Foster crouched beside the body, pressing her fingers against his neck. No pulse. She figured as much. She studied the body briefly. The deceased lay on his stomach, arms laying above his head, as though he had tried to break his fall. His legs stretched out behind him, as though he fell to his knees first. Foster grunted as she recognized the kitchen's missing knife from the butcher block sticking out of his back. From the cuts in his shirt, it looked like he had been stabbed at least twice, and clearly didn't see his attacker coming. A pool of blood, still damp, surrounded the body. He likely bled out rather than the stab killing him. Foster stood, staring down at the body. Marianne didn't live with anyone, and with the window shattered, this man must have been the culprit. It was easy to assume Marianne defended herself and stopped the intruder before stealing anything, though she couldn't yet speak those accusations aloud, as it was all speculation. Foster looked forward, noticing a pair of doors. Whatever he was after must have been inside the bedroom closet, unless he heard Marianne coming up the stairs and tried to hide. Without being able to make out the words, Foster heard Marianne's voice raise. It seemed time was up. Before heading back downstairs, the detective made a quick call for backup and forensics. The house was now a crime scene, and the detectives would gladly leave the home for now. But little did Marianne know she was going with them. Foster sauntered down the stairs as she wrote notes in her notepad. About halfway down, she heard Marianne's sharp tone. "What were you doing upstairs? Who gave you permission to go upstairs?" "You did," Foster replied. "We came over to check out a possible break-in, and you let us inside. I checked things out, and, yep, you've got a broken window." Marianne swallowed a lump in her throat. She stomped over to the front door, opening it wide. "Out. After you," Foster responded. She walked over to the door, motioning for Marianne to lead the way with a smile. "The house is a crime scene now, so we'll need to vacate the premises until forensics gets here." A squeak escaped Marianne's lips, but she didn't move. Foster held out a hand. "Shall we walk out together?" Marianne glared at the officer, clutching her pearls. "I can walk myself. Thank you very much." She snubbed the detective by throwing her nose in the air as she strutted onto the porch and down the front steps, as though it was her idea to exit. Daniels leaned closer to his partner as the two stepped outside, closing the front door. "I'm confused. The broken window was in the master bedroom, along with the body of a man with a knife sticking out of his back. When walking through the kitchen, I noticed the butcher block missed a knife," Foster explained in hushed tones. Daniels exhaled, putting his hands on his hips. "A homicide? We haven't seen one of those in, what, a decade? Something like that. And to think one of our residents was a trespasser." "Who died?" Foster watched Marianne, who paced her front yard, one hand fiddling with her pearls, and the other by her mouth as she bit her fingernails. "Subtle. That's the concerning bit," she answered. "More concerning than our newest resident possibly being a murderer? I didn't recognize the body." Daniels let his arms fall against his sides. "That's not possible. We keep track of who enters town, even tourists. No one's entered Willow's Landing since Marianne arrived 6 months ago." Foster shrugged her shoulders. "I said it was concerning." Daniels threw his head back, groaning. "So, we have a new resident who keeps to herself, and a stranger new to town who breaks into her house and she murders him in return. Technically, we can't say she was the one who murdered him. It's definitely likely, of course, but we need to do some investigating first. It's still enough to hold her for questioning." Daniels smirked. Foster chuckled. "This is true. She can't run away or avoid our questions anymore now, can she?" They heard sirens in the distance, getting louder as backup arrived. The detectives noticed Marianne freeze in her tracks, looking off into the distance. Before she could make a break for it, the partners sandwiched her. "Are you aware there's a dead body in your bedroom?" Foster questioned. Marianne gasped. "Excuse me?" "So, you didn't see anyone in your room?" Daniels added. Marianne twisted her head to face him. She glared at him. "Of course not. Are you aware the broken window was in the main bedroom?" Foster continued. Marianne turned her head back around to face her. "Well, yeah. I went to check it out, remember? I thought the cat broke something. You saw the window, but didn't see the body?" Daniels pressed. Marianne breathed heavily, looking back and forth between the two. Finally, she threw her hands up, narrowing her eyes at the ground. "I don't know what you think you're trying to do, but it won't work on me." A couple police cruisers pulled up to the house. Neighbors started peering out from behind their curtains, some sitting on their front porches. One man, not even trying to be subtle, started dusting his swing porch while making heavy eye contact with the police arriving. "Are you aware there's a knife missing from your kitchen?" Foster proceeded anyway. Marianne stomped her foot, covered ears, and squeezed her eyes shut. The detectives rolled their eyes at one another. Daniels took this as an opportunity to step away to get the rest of the team up to speed. "I refuse to be interrogated like this. You came by without my calling you for help. You searched my house without a warrant. Now you're treating me like some sort of criminal." Foster folded her arms, shrugging nonchalantly. "Fine. Forget the body. The fact remains that someone broke into your house, and now they're dead. Were you expecting anyone today?" Marianne relaxed her shoulders, staring quizzically at the detective. "No. Was someone staying with you at your house?" "No. Have you spoken to anyone recently about something special you keep in your house? Do you know why anyone would want to break in?" Marianne shrugged, shaking her head. She played with her necklace again, deep in thought. "No, I've never even seen him before." Foster sighed, pulling out her handcuffs. "What are you doing?" Marianne took a step back in horror. "Seen who?" Foster pressed, holding on to the cuffs. Marianne hesitated, but pointed to her house. With a condescending attitude, she said, "The supposed body you claim to be in my house?" Matching her tone, Foster replied, "We never said the body was a man." Marianne froze, pressing her lips together. "Put your hands behind your back," Foster said. Marianne did as she was told, too shocked to disobey. She listened as Foster read her rights, too stunned to speak. As soon as Foster completed the speech, Marianne opened her mouth to protest. But the detective stopped her as she led her to a squad car. "Don't speak," she ordered. "You've said too much already." The Unnatural Diary, Part 1, The Unintended Discovery. Dust swirled in the dim light as Sarah pushed aside a stack of brittle newspapers, her fingers brushing against something unexpected, soft, worn leather. She reached into the box of forgotten books and relics, pulling free an old, weathered diary. Its edges were frayed with time, the cover nearly stripped of its once proud embossing, now smooth and cool beneath her touch. A faint residue of salt clung to its surface, as if it had weathered years of quiet decay or been touched by the sea itself. Intrigued, she carefully pried it open near the middle, where thick, textured pages crackled with age. The paper felt different, denser than usual, almost like parchment. The ink, though faded, carried an unusual shimmer, as if the words still pulsed with some lingering energy, revealing a chilling passage. I had to move quickly, but the floorboards betrayed me, groaning beneath my steps as I crept through the darkened hall. It was close. I could feel its snarling breath, cold and damp, seeping through the walls, making them feel thinner than they were. The air was thick with the weight of its presence. I had to make it to the kitchen. I had to get to the closest bag of consecrated salt before it was too late. A shiver ran down Sarah's spine. The words read like a story, yet something about them felt strangely real and weren't meant to entertain, but to warn. She flipped another page, the dry parchment whispering as it moved, and something slipped loose. A note, a single yellowed slip of paper, fluttered to the attic floor. Sarah bent to retrieve it, her pulse quickening as she read the hastily scrawled words. "If you've found this, it already knows. It already knows?" The words sent a shiver down Sarah's spine. What does that mean? What already knows? Shaking off the unease, she set the diary aside, convincing herself it was just a very old diary. Nothing more. She returned to cleaning, determined to finish the task before indulging her curiosity. Later, with the attic finally organized, Sarah sank into the old desk chair she had recently dusted off and pulled from the corner. It paired well with an antique desk she had just cleaned off. a piece that had likely sat buried beneath clutter for years. Exhaustion giving way to curiosity, she reached for the diary, opening it to the first page, her fingers brushing over the worn pages, coming to the inside of the cover, where a passage so intimate it felt as though she was intruding on something deeply personal, was scrawled in elegant handwriting. To my beautiful Colette, may the enchantment of these pages cradle your precious memories and bridge the distance between us, keeping our hearts forever intertwined with eternal love. Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. Beneath the inscription, in a more delicate script, another line had been added, given to me by my love on Saturday, February 28th, 1953. Sarah's pulse quickened. The names, Roderick Shadowthorn, Moonvale Hollow, felt almost otherworldly, like something plucked from a forgotten fairy tale. Sarah turned to the first entry, March 2nd, 1953. My dearest new diary. I am excited to begin writing. I can scarcely believe my fortune. Has it only been weeks since I met Roderick? It feels as though I have known him forever, as though our souls recognized one another long before our eyes had ever met. He is unlike anyone I have ever known. His presence is both briskly confident and gentle, and his words laced with a wisdom as though he has seen lifetimes beyond my own. Fascinates me. When I am with him, the world feels richer and brighter, as if I have stepped beyond the veil and into something wondrous. His world is unlike anything I could have imagined. Mystical, brimming with enchantment and secrets woven through everything there. He speaks of things I cannot yet comprehend, yet I believe every word. When he takes my hand, I swear I can feel the pulse of something ancient and powerful. He calls himself a hermit, or rather, that's what others call him. But to me, he is nothing short of extraordinary. Everything about him is mesmerizing. His long, dark waves that frame his face, the depth of his warm brown eyes, and oh, the way he looks at me, as if I am the only thing that exists in his world. It sends my heart racing, my breath catching in my throat. I have never felt so seen, so cherished. If this is love, then let me remain lost in it forever. I do not know what the future holds, nor how we will balance our lives together. But I know I wish to be with Roderick forever, and I will follow wherever this enchantment leads, forever hopeful. Colette. Wow. Sarah exhaled the word, unable to stop the tinge of jealousy creeping into her voice. To feel that in love, to be cherished like that. She had once known that feeling, back when she and Neil were still wrapped in the bliss of their early days. But those days had faded, worn thin by time and disappointment, until all that remained was silence and a divorce finalized 3 years ago. Now, Her world revolved around work, the occasional night out with friends, and a growing reluctance to let anyone get too close again. She shook off the thought and turned the page, only to feel as though something else was guiding her hand. The diary fell open to a blank page, yet at the top, written in the same elegant script, a date had already been inscribed. March 15th, 2025. Sarah's breath hitched. Her pulse pounded in her ears. That's today's date. She stumbled back, nearly losing her balance. Her mind raced for an explanation, but none made sense. The diary was old, decades old. How could this be? A chill swept through the attic, and she rubbed her arms, trying to shake the unease pressing against her chest. It's just a coincidence, a weird, creepy coincidence. Forcing a nervous laugh, she muttered, "Okay, that's enough reading for today. I just need a shower, food, and..." Before she could finish, a brilliant light erupted from the diary, flooding the attic in a blinding radiance. The air crackled, thick with an energy she could feel rushing over her skin. A high-pitched hum filled her ears as the pages of the diary flared open, their edges glowing with an unnatural heat. Sarah barely had time to scream before the light consumed her. Then, silence. The attic stood empty. The diary lay undisturbed on the desk. A new entry had appeared on the once blank page. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will. The sentence trailed off, the ink still wet, as if waiting to be finished. Part 2. The vanished sister. As the last of the evening sun faded into a moonless sky, Gloria settled in beside her husband, the familiar hum of their favorite television show filling the room. The night was calm, uneventful, until the phone shattered the quiet with a sharp trill. Gloria glanced at the caller ID. A slight frown creased her brow. Miranda? Sarah's friend? Why would she be calling? Perplexed, she rose from the couch, murmuring to her husband, "I'll be right back." Pressing the phone to her ear, she answered hesitantly. "Hello? Miranda? Hey, Gloria. I'm sorry for calling so late." Miranda's voice wavered, the hesitation in her tone setting Gloria instantly on edge. "I got your number from Sarah's records," and Gloria's throat tightened. Sarah's records? We were wondering if everything was okay with her. She hasn't been to work in about a week, and we're starting to get worried. We've tried calling, leaving messages, but she hasn't answered. This isn't like her at all. And Miranda hesitated before continuing, her voice barely above a whisper. She missed an important deadline for a major project on Wednesday. Gloria gripped the phone tighter. "Sarah? Missing work?" ignoring calls, failing to meet a deadline. The words barely registered as the realization slowly settled into fear. She hadn't spoken to her sister in nearly 2 weeks. That wasn't unusual for them. Life had a way of pulling them in different directions, but Sarah not showing up for work and no word to anyone, that was impossible. That was not Sarah, and suddenly, the quiet night didn't feel so peaceful anymore. The familiar rhythm of her world began to close in. Where is my sister? By the time the police got involved, Gloria had already exhausted every possible explanation. Even Sarah's ex-husband Neil had flown into town, trying to find out what he could from their mutual acquaintances and his family in the area. But the more they searched, the deeper the mystery became. There were no signs of forced entry, no struggle, no evidence of foul play. Sarah's car remained parked in the driveway. Her purse sat neatly on the dining table, car keys beside it. The house, meticulously arranged, just as she always kept it. Security footage only deepened the mystery. The last recording showed Sarah arriving home from work last Friday, locking the door behind her, and then nothing. No one entered. No one left, leaving the house feeling eerily undisturbed, as if she had vanished without a trace. Her co-workers, Amalia and Miranda, had been the first to raise the alarm. They knew their friend would not miss work, especially not a major deadline, not without calling, not without an explanation. This was an impossibility for someone as methodical and precise as Sarah. So where had she gone? Then there was the opened diary in the attic, sitting on the antique desk in the attic. Its cracked leather cover bore the weight of years. It wasn't Sarah's. Gloria knew that much. The pages, thick and time-worn, had been left open as if abandoned in haste. And there, scrawled in elegant yet unsettling handwriting, was a date, March 15th, 2025, last Saturday, the day after Sarah was last seen. The police had skimmed through the diary, dismissing it as nothing more than an old journal Sarah had stumbled upon. Perhaps she had been reading it, maybe even planning to write something inspired by it. After all, she had only moved into the house last October. The previous owner, a woman in her 90s, had passed away the year before, and her children had taken what little they wanted. Antiques, heirlooms, family photographs. The rest had been left behind in their rush to sell the house. But as Gloria sat at the old antique desk staring at the diary, unease slithered through her. She reached for it hesitantly, fingers grazing the worn leather cover. A whisper of movement stirred the air, though the room was still. The moment she picked up the book, a chill pricked deep in her bones. Something told her that Sarah hadn't just disappeared. She had been taken. Part 3, the final entry. Taking a steadying breath, Gloria flipped through the pages, only to have them land on the last recorded entry again. March 15th, 2025. I could sense a release. The connection to her world is back. It seems different somehow. Oh, how I can't wait to see her again. What is this? She opened it? Who is she? She has dared to open Colette's diary. She will answer for this. She will... The ink shimmered in shifting, iridescent hues of black and blue, as if the words were still being formed, not yet complete. A low hum vibrated through the attic, the air thickening with something unnatural. Gloria clenched her jaw. An aching sense of dread settled in her chest. This wasn't just a diary. This was something else. Something supernatural. Sarah, what did you do? With a deep breath, she turned the page. And March 20th, 2025. She keeps running again. I'll find her again. She will tell me where Colette is. She does not belong. She is not Colette. She fights, but she cannot escape. She will stay. If I cannot have my Colette, I found her again. She hides. These people cannot protect her from me. She is strong, but endurance lasts only so long. Gloria's stomach twisted. Sarah was alive, but she wasn't just missing. She was trapped. Somewhere beyond this world, desperation clawed at her chest. There had to be something, some way to help Sarah. Flipping frantically through the brittle pages, she stopped when she found an entry dated April 10th, 1956. The ink was uneven, smudged in places, as though written in haste. April 10th, 1956. I have kept it at bay with consecrated salt. I believe I have found a way to seal this diary. It was forged by Roderick's own hands, a doorway between both worlds. It seems impossible to destroy, but I must protect my husband, my children. The salt has bound the door. He cannot come through that way again. I did love him once, but what he was becoming, now he is lost to rage and darkness. No longer the man I loved. He is something else now. A vile creature. I pray no one ever finds this diary. I have been told, soak cloth in sea salt. Wrap the diary within it. The realms will be severed. If this works, this will be my last entry. If it doesn't, God help me. The smudged words ended abruptly. Gloria's hands trembled as she closed the diary. She knew what she had to do. Colette had sealed the diary once before. Gloria would do it again. Gloria searched the attic, her hands trembling, looking for any salt that may have been left. Thankfully, Sarah had cleaned and organized the space not too long ago, making it easier to find what she needed. But would it work? Would it not only seal the diary, but also bring Sarah back? Her fingers brushed against something cool and metallic. An old tin can with the words "Consecrated Salt" embossed on its worn surface. Inside, a thick, heavy bag of salt remained untouched. Waiting, anxious, Gloria quickly opened the diary to the most recent entry. Her heart pounded as she poured a thick line of salt down the center of the open pages, then traced a protective circle around it. She didn't know what she was doing, but she had to do something. It had already been a week since Sarah disappeared. The air shifted. A strange, oppressive stillness pressed down on the attic. Then, the diary lifted off the desk. A plume of smoke curled from its pages as an eerie glow pulsed from within. The pages flared open, flipping wildly as a gust of wind erupted through the attic. Bolts of crackling light shot from the diary, slamming into the wooden beams and shaking the very foundation of the house. Gloria stumbled back, shielding her face as the attic groaned, the walls pulsating as if the house itself were alive. Then, a scream, low and guttural, full of rage and loss, a scream that was not human. And just as suddenly as it began, everything stilled. The diary dropped to the floor with a final thud, its edges slightly singed. The attic fell silent, the air refreshed into somewhat normalcy. Gloria hesitated before stepping forward. The diary lay motionless, its pages now eerily still. A single final entry had appeared. March 21st, 2025. She is gone. My Colette has left me. I am nothing without her. Oh, Colette. I am so sorry. I loved you so. I waited. You never came. I am no more, finally, released from my agony. Then, without warning, the diary slammed shut. Gloria's breath caught. Where is Sarah? Please, give me my sister back, she cried, voice breaking. A soft thud echoed from downstairs. Heart pounding, Gloria bolted down the steps. And there, lying in the center of the living room, was Sarah. Dazed, shaken, a little battered, but very much alive. Sarah blinked at her, disoriented. Gloria? Her voice was hoarse, barely above a whisper. You're here. What happened? Tears blurred Gloria's vision as she rushed forward, pulling her sister into a fierce hug. Oh, Sarah, you're home. Sarah shuddered against her. I saw him. Roderick. He was a monster, Gloria. Twisted by rage. He was searching for Colette, furious that she had betrayed him, that she had moved on, married someone else. Gloria cupped Sarah's face, her thumbs brushing against her cheeks, wiping the tears. You're safe now. It's over. Sarah's gaze flickered toward the attic door. Her voice was quieter now, wary. Is it? Gloria took a slow breath. I think he finally found peace. After all these years, he was released from his pain. Sarah nodded, but unease lingered in her expression. Then let's make sure no one ever opens that diary again, Gloria agreed. And without hesitation, they climbed back up to the attic, grabbing the diary. Then, under the moon's watchful glow, they carried it out back, straight to the fire pit. As the flames consumed the aged leather and time-worn pages, an unnatural wind howled through the trees, carrying with it the last echoes of Roderick Shadowthorn of Moonvale Hollow. And for the first time in 70 years, Moonvale Hollow would be forgotten forever, or so they hoped. Venus, buried. The girl in the graveyard is your best friend, So you take her home. The night is a bruise between you, a blotch of rogue in the passenger window, the color of fruit left out to fester. The body pries at her seatbelt, a finger, then two. The radio echoes static. The body shuffles in her seat. You study the face, the similar slice of jaw, the nose humped from where a baseball had hit her at 12, just slightly off-center. The skin like a rain-licked plastic bag, the stink of musk and sulfur. You want to look away, but you cannot. She's so beautiful, even like this. Your headlights rake warbled slits through the dirt road, a yellow like jaundice. Your hands are stiff from the cold, your lips cracked. The girl beside you is dead, and you are bringing her home. 4 days ago, you'd stepped into a hardware store and emerged with a shovel sturdy enough to lift a life on. 4 days, you'd spent digging dirt in your own backyard yard until loam muddied under your fingernails and erratic holes split garden beds like the mouths of greedy beasts. Until you could sift through soil with your eyes closed, with a hand bound. 4 nights you had laid in your bed, staring at the pockmarked ceiling, wondering what it felt like to burn alive. Now, the shovel beats dull against the skin of your trunk, your hands gripping the steering wheel like a throat you're trying to silence. The body turns, dawn bleaching the salmon gray of her skin. The left eye slips from its socket, and she pushes it back in with the heel of her hand. She smiles, head lolling like a marionette's. "Sorry, baby." Her voice comes out strained. "I wasn't expecting company. I'm sure you understand." In a sickle of citrus moonlight, Adeline Marcus smiles up at you with shell-pale gums. Adeline Marcus died on the 31st of October and was buried a week later, the date on her gravestone a month shy of her 18th birthday. In the court, the boys would claim it was an accident, that they didn't know she was inside. For better or worse, you believe them. The fingers striking out matchboxes, the beer cans constellating the sidewalk. A prank gone too far, the wrong place, the wrong time. It doesn't have to be on purpose. She didn't have to be home. The coroner ruled it suffocation. But all you can imagine is flame like a stiff palm, striking over and over. Adeline had crawled from the mouth of the home on her hands and knees. She was dead by the time she reached the pavement, her Sunday dress singed up to her knees. The dress you knew well enough. Either way, the boys were left with 25 to life, and the Marcas were left with a dead daughter, a ring of ash like chalk on the pavement. You were left with a misplaced guilt, like hunger, a guilt like an Ouroboros, choking on the tail, swallowing the head, eating yourself alive and being unable to stop, even as it consumes you. Because this wasn't the sort of thing that happened to good people. You watch water curl down your shower drain, carrying with it mortuary makeup, kaleidoscopic insects, and jasmine bubbles. Strings of dirt stretched out like sinew. The body's head rests on her knees, vertebrae needling through her back like a line of molars. The electric lights wash her green, dark veins rooted under brittle skin. She turns her face to the shower head and picks at the powdery sediment under her fingernails. The shower floor is a mess of grit. And you think of a child scooping up the sand. You turn the heat up until it scalds and scrub mildew from the base of the shower door. You think, if you can only get everything clean, everything will be all right. She turns her head and looks at you through eyes obscured by glass paneling. She says, "It's not as bad as all that." I don't even think I felt a thing, but she says it through lips the color of spoiled plums, so the sentiment doesn't ring true. You lift threadbare towels from the bottoms of your linen closet. You walk 3 times around your block and return to a corpse sat on your sofa like she has nowhere better to be. There are ants in your sugar bowl. You try to remove them, lift their crystal-knotted bodies on the prong of a fork, but they slip between the gaps, and you are left with a mess bigger than when you started. Tea-brown sludge bleeding from thoraxes and the stink of vinegar. There's a dead girl on your sofa. But let's focus on the ants in your sugar bowl. The way they thread through cysts of white like veins on a leaf. Like the capillaries that run through the skin of your face. You make tea anyway. You add too much milk and sit cross-legged in front of the body. She stares at you. You stare back. The two of you drink, and ribbons of watery milk pour clean out her trachea, the gaping hole in her chest. But she doesn't stop drinking until you do. "You're not looking at me," she says. "Not really." "Yes, I am." You twist your hands in the shag carpet. "Aren't I now?" "No," she says. "You're not." You leave your teacup on the floor, saucer an iris of yellow, and go upstairs. You take 2 cigarettes from the carton squashed on your father's desk, and then think better of it. Press down with your heel until tobacco dissipates into the tawny carpet. You change your bed sheets twice. Eggshell white. No, gray with peonies. You make a second cup of tea. When you get back to the room, the body is still there. You are looking at her. You are not looking at her. "Do I disgust you?" she says. "No." She shakes her head, dark hair plastered to her shoulders like reeds. "No more than I always did. You need to sleep." You say, "Baby." She tilts her head to one side. "Sleeping is all I've ever done." The last time you saw Adeline Marcus alive was in the back of a stranger's car, parked on a stranger's street, with the taste of a stranger's tequila fresh between your lips. You were never too built for parties. So the outcome was a pair of girls who looked like they were playing dress-up. Blousy dresses with sleeves like a nun's. Thrift store necklaces noosing your necks. Shoplifted lipstick, which she hid beneath her mattress. More wax than pigment. But in the citrus peel of street lights, in the low trill of distant music, the two of you looked beautiful. She had her legs curled under her and was sitting sideways in the back seat, her hand resting on your knee, and the other palmed against the window, a song on her lips that you couldn't quite place. You were too close, but it was night, and everyone was inside and drunk. And sometimes we all need to feel closer than we should be, to lose ourselves a little. The song melted on her lips, swallowed into the limp press of salvia and booze. And you said something like, "I think I should go home now." And she said something like, "Have another drink." And so you did. You let her pour the liquor into the flimsy mouths of red plastic cups and watched her swallow. She said, "You're so pretty." And you said, "I think you should stop." And she said, "Just let me say that one thing." And you wanted to say, "Stop fucking looking at me like that." And you wanted to say, "I want to crawl inside you and make a life for myself in the city of your mind." And you wanted to say, "Let's just be quiet. Let's just not talk. Let's just not ruin a good thing by telling the truth." Instead, you pushed open the passenger door, stumbled out onto the skin of vein blue sidewalk. "I'm going home now." The body lays with her back to your bed, hands worming in the floral sheets, chestnut hair spilling across her throat, past the ballpoint pen-marred bedposts, over the gray skin of her forehead. You are thinking about the silken mouth of a coffin. You are thinking of how she looked when you pulled her from the rose mouth of heaven. The radiator hums. A lace curtain bellies your open window. She rolls over onto her side, slots her hands together like pieces of a decaying jigsaw puzzle. You still can't even look at me. Her mouth moves too slowly, words like chewing gum. "Why am I here, Bet? What's it for?" There are pink crescent moons on the bed of your palms from the bite of your nails. She pulls her knees to her chest and a bone cracks. She pulls her knees to her chest and a molar tumbles from between her keyhole lips. "You can only love me when I'm not here. You can only love me when there's nothing left to love." You press your cheek to the cool spread of linen beside her. You listen to the steady beat of your heart, the way you can feel it in your fingertips, entirely singular. "Don't tell anyone." You say, "Did you want it to die with me, Beta?" She shifts, and her hair falls against the nape of your neck. Were you glad it was silenced? Don't tell anyone. You say again. She sighs, lays herself back down, so you're face to face. Crooked nose, eye pulling from its socket. The onset of gray-green decay wreathing her jaw. The smell of soil and rot and cicada-heavy nighttime. Who could I tell? She brushes your hand. I'm not really here. And suddenly, you can imagine it is your fists splitting beer cans in two, like overripe fruit. It is your fingers on the matchbox, your fingers striking out. But you both know the house would still be on fire. And you both know you'd leave alone. You take her hand. You put your face in the crook of her neck and beg forgiveness from a ghost. Lessons from my shadow dreams. It was storming. The sky a slab of slate with swollen thunderclouds crowding its expanse, each nudging for room. A wicked, unrelenting wind whipped chestnut hair into my eyes and mouth. Pulling it out of my face, I looked at the desolation surrounding me. Empty air met me in every direction. I don't know where I am, I realize, as the panic starts to set in, and my breathing turns shallow and rapid. On my hands and knees, kneeling on what appears to be sand made from stardust, I take a calming breath and rise until I'm standing. What is this place? Where am I? The last thing I remember is going to bed, my lids shutting to the lavender of my walls as I slowly drifted off to sleep. Not knowing what else to do, I started walking, and that's when the voices began and the shadows formed. At first, it was small. It was subtle. A whisper here, a mutter there, voices that got louder as I trudged on. I struggled against the wind, hugging my arms to myself, each hand gripping an elbow until my knuckles turned white as chalk. As I walked, the black, star-lit sand at my feet began to rise with the wind, forming shadowy figures that strode alongside me, the overlapping voices tumbling from their open mouths. I watched in morbid fascination, my feet slowing as their dark forms became recognizable, their faces slowly morphing into a colorless version of the faces I know. On my right was my mother, a horrendous, nightmare version of my mother, her blue eyes dark as coal, and her face twisted with malice. What are you doing? Really, Midge? Are you fucking stupid? What's wrong with you? Came from the cavern that was her mouth. My eyes went wide, fear and pain forming as tears that threatened to spill. You're not good enough. Why would I want to touch you? You're not what I want. Came from my left, and my head whipped to see an equally nightmarish version of my ex. At this point, my feet had slowed until I was almost at a complete stop. More and more, figures from both my past and present began to form and dance around me, each hurling their own unique version of verbal awfulness. With each invisible blow, I shrunk until I was crouched on the shifting sand. Hands splayed over my face to cover sight and sound. I squeezed my eyes, silently begging for it to end, for the voices and noise and all the venom of the world to stop. "Midge, breakfast?" I gasped, jolting awake to my mom's voice calling from the kitchen. As reality settled in, a sick dread pooled in my gut at the vague nightmare I'd left behind. "It was a bad dream, Midge. Just a bad dream," I mumbled to myself as I rubbed the sleep from my eyes. I tramped downstairs, the thick soles of my boots making loud thuds on each carpet-covered step. I slid into a distressed wooden chair at our equally distressed dining table that doubled as our breakfast nook. As I shoved eggs in my mouth, scrambled just how my mom knows I like it, I thought about our history exam today with rising anxiety. I was not the best at memorizing details, like dates or times, and last night, Amy had another drama round with her douche of a boyfriend. My mom sat across from me, early morning sunlight streaming in from the window sink, sipping coffee from the chipped Mom of the Year mug I got her for Christmas last year, before Dad left. Before it all fell apart, we sat together in silence. She analyzed me over her mug as I finished off my butter-soaked toast. "You okay, honey? You seem stressed," she asked with a slight tilt of her head. I nibbled my toast while staring at my plate, not wanting to admit how egregiously unprepared I was for the day's exam, or the nightmare I'd endured that clung to me like static. It felt like I was seeing reality underwater, my senses warbled and muffled, making everything as impactful as an echo. My mom cleared her throat, snapping me out of my reverie. "Midge?" she asked, her gaze holding concern as lines formed between her dark brows. "I'm okay, just not as ready for my exam today as I'd like to be," I answered simply. The truth was, I wasn't ready at all for anything. My mom pursed her lips and narrowed her eyes, a clear sign she knew I was lying. To be fair, technically, I really was worried about the exam today, but I also was still disturbed by my nightmare, which stuck to me like a dark, immovable shroud. And it being my parents' divorce anniversary didn't exactly help. As if sensing my thoughts, my mom's eyes darted to the calendar on our white linoleum fridge, absolutely covered with magnets and pamphlets or flyers. Instantly, her gaze softened when she recognized the date. "Hey, it's gonna be okay, baby. I know today will be hard, but you'll be okay. Plus, your father is still coming for a family dinner this Friday," she said with a quirk of her mouth, as if that should excite me, as if that fixed everything. I simply nodded as I tried to swallow my last bite of toast, which had turned to sandpaper in my throat. "Gotta go, Mom. Thanks for breakfast." Before she could answer, I quickly grabbed my backpack and was out the door. I sat in history, staring blankly at the open-ended questions in front of me. Mr. Sikowitz sat at his desk in the front of the class, hunched over papers he was likely grading for a different set of students. His red pen lightly roving and marking with steadfast eyes. I looked back down at the unanswered prompts in front of me and felt my heart start to quicken. Gods, I'm screwed. Dad would be so disappointed, I thought with increasing fear. My breathing became slightly uneven, and with the panic, my nightmare from the night before reached towards the front of my mind. This was the last thing I needed. But it seemed the more I tried to repress the images and the memory, the harder they fought back. Shadows began to gather at the edge of my vision. That same smoky, starlit sand from the dream clustering along my peripheral. I blinked hard 2 or 3 times while keeping my head down, trying to force this contorted melding out of existence through sheer denial. But to no avail. The darkness stayed. Slowly, and with threatening dread, the dregs of my nightmare creeped towards my desk until it surrounded me on every side. I briefly darted my eyes around the room, desperate to find some reaction, any recognition from my classmates of the nightmare unfolding. But I was left wanting. The line between dream and reality was paper thin, blurring further as the familiar wraith-like figures began to swirl upwards and form, then shattered entirely as my nightmare came to life. My mother was again on my right, with a mouth black as pitch and her blue eyes drained of color once more. What makes you think you can do this, Midge? Answer me, Midge. What's wrong with you? Are you fucking stupid? She hissed as her ghastly form drifted towards my ear, her teeth gnashing with each syllable. It wasn't exactly the same as the nightmare, but it was damn similar. Now my father, in his trademark suit and tie, took shape in front of me, causing me to flick my gaze upwards. Looking was a mistake. His usually coiffed hair laid limply on his head. His eyes were endless black holes, and he stood with his arms crossed, intimidating and unmovable despite his form. His slightly transparent clothes were rumpled and worn, which wasn't like him at all. And he looked at me with a face of disgust and hatred as I'd never known. At least, not from him. Grow up, Midge. What's your problem? Why can't you just get this right? He shouted, somehow slamming his not-so-solid hand on my desk, causing me to jump to my feet with a yelp, my chair making a loud crash as collateral. Ms. Sloan, can I help you with something? My head whipped over to Mr. Sikowitz, and just like that, as I met his dark brown eyes, the spell was broken. I looked around, and realized that the echo of my nightmare had vanished, and all eyes were on me, as if deciding if they needed to grab the straitjacket now or later. I audibly swallowed. No, sorry, Mr. Sikovitz, I said, as I haphazardly righted my chair off the ground and sat while keeping my head and eyes firmly down, my dark hair creating a curtain on either side of my pallid face. The rest of the day passed in an anxiety-filled blur. At every turn and every corner, I looked for the shadows, waited for the starlit sand to reappear, and inch along the edge of my vision, anticipating the god-awful convergence of my nightmare and reality. But it never did. I stared out the bus window on the way home, watching the rain spatter the glass in large, heavy drops. "Hi, honey," my mom hollered from the kitchen when she heard me walk through the door, her voice warm and rich over the cold I felt in my bones, like a homespun blanket. Our house was a pretty open floor plan, with the kitchen slightly sectioned off, but having two large archways on either end of its L-shaped design. I watched her through this opening for a moment, trying to reconcile the nightmare version of her I saw at school with the flesh and blood in front of me. She was currently unloading the dishwasher, and when her hello was met with silence, she turned to look at me, her arm pausing briefly as she made to put away a plate. Her face scrunched, and she immediately put the dish on the counter. "What's wrong, honey? Did something happen at school?" I tried to speak. I tried to open my mouth to tell her about all of it, but nothing would come except tears that began to blur my vision. "Oh, honey," my mom said, as she strode over to me, crossing the distance in 3 or 4 strides due to her unfairly long legs. I let her hug me, soaked up the feeling of being wrapped in her arms, and for a solid couple of minutes, we stood in the entryway like that. I reveled in her warmth, the sensation of her solid arms around me, and memorized every detail that made her real. Keeping contact with a hand on my shoulder, she guided me to the couch where we sat, knees angled towards each other. "Honey, what is it?" she asked. I looked at her, and at first, I could only stutter. As I struggled to form coherent words, I felt my anxiety and panic start to rise. The shadows were at the edge of my vision again, causing my breathing to turn rapid and shallow. "Honey?" my mom asked, leaning closer. I could barely hear her, barely see her, over the pounding of my own heart. "Midge," my mom said, a bit louder now, giving my leg a slight shake as she placed her hand on my knee. The shadows and the darkness were beginning to take shape now, starlit sand rolling across the ground as it crept ever closer. Tears pooled along my lids, causing my vision to blur. Suddenly, warm, soft hands enclosed my face, and my mom's face, my real mom's face, swam in front of me. "Midge," she seemed to say in almost a whisper. "Look at me, look at me," she said, increasing the pressure around my head. "You are not broken, okay? I don't know exactly what you're seeing, but it's not real, okay? I'm real. I'm here," she said, taking the limp hand from my lap and gently placing it over her heart. I felt the softness of her wool sweater under my fingertips, like touching a cloud made of silk. I focused on her eyes, blue, just like they were supposed to be. Your mom's, right here, Midge, right here. Not that ghoulish thing of nightmares, I thought to myself, as the vile shadow, puppeting as her pushed and crowded closer along my peripheral. That's it, baby. I'm right here. Breathe, honey. Breathe with me. Focus on my voice, on my face. I'm right here, she said with a squeeze of my fingers, as she had removed her hands from my head and was now holding my own in her lap, her gaze unwavering. I took a steadying breath. Just breathe, Midge. That's all you have to do. Just breathe. I counted to 10 as I inhaled and did the same on the exhale as my mom, keeping hold of my hands, did the same. That's it, honey. Breathe. Just breathe. 10 in and 10 out. You can do this. I nodded, and as I expanded my lungs in and out, feeling my pulse start to slow, blessedly, the shadows began to ebb, receding from the edge of my vision. The grotesque, half-formed versions of my loved ones melting and fading away, bit by bit. By about the 5th or 6th of these exercises, the nightmare was all but gone, the shadows having slunk back to whatever hellish mindscape they belonged to. There she is, my mom said with relief, seeing my eyes clear and the panic gone, a slight smile playing on her lips. I crumpled, burying my head into her chest with small sobs. "Oh, honey," she let out softly, stroking the top of my head as only a mom can. "Has this happened before?" she asked gently. I lied, shaking my head slightly as I kept it tucked into the crook of her arm. Gods, her sweater felt like the softest pillow. I soaked up the comfort. "Mid, do you know why your father left?" I whipped my head up, pushing out of her arms, taken aback by the subject change. Realizing I wasn't going to answer her, she continued, but her face took on a faraway look, as if trying to see through the smog of time to the not-so-distant past. Our family, both the men and the women, have always struggled to master themselves. We have the curse of extreme feeling, of intangible emotions strong enough to drown countries. And for some of us, that leaks into our dreams. And then, sometimes, those dreams, usually the darkest of nightmares, leak into our reality. She shifted her focus back to me and asked with a tilt of her head, "Do you understand what I'm saying, Midge?" "No, not really," I mumbled, swallowing and tucking a loose strand of hair behind my ear. My mom leaned forward, using her thumbs to wipe away my residual tears, and took my hands in hers. "Honey, what were you feeling? What did you see?" she asked, her blue eyes piercing. I don't know," I said, avoiding her gaze. "I was sitting in class, trying to take my test, and, well, I wasn't sure of some answers. And then I was thinking about Dad, and I panicked. Then the nightmare started. But no one else could see it, just me." At this, I raised my head to look at her with wide eyes, searching for answers or preparing for a straitjacket, whichever came first. My mom pursed her lips, seeming to debate how much she should or shouldn't say. I saw the moment she decided to bear all, clear as day. "Honey, you were experiencing a moment of extreme emotion, of anxiety and fear, maybe panic. And sometimes those things can make us forget who we are, or even where we are. For the few in our family who have a very special heart, our emotions can cause our worst fears or worst anxieties to come to life. It usually takes an extreme or traumatic event. And given today's date," she trailed off, her eyes going distant again. After a moment, with a shake of her head, she returned her attention to me. She made to speak, but I stopped her before she could get a word out. "What happened with Dad?" I asked. My mom silently opened and closed her mouth, clearly struggling with what to say or how to say it. "When it happened to me while I was with your father, he thought I had gone half mad. Mine was a nightmare too, a wretched one that had me crouched in the corner like a rabid animal. Once we learned of our family history and what some of us have to deal with, he decided he didn't want to stay with someone who couldn't trust her own emotions, her own feelings, whose reality and dreams tended to mix and meld until they were one and the same." My mom's voice got progressively softer as she spoke, until it was barely above a mere whisper. "I'm so sorry, Mom," I said, taking hold of her hands and squeezing her palms. "That's all right, sweetie," she responded with a grimace, tucking another strand of chocolate brown hair behind my ear. "You know why?" Her eyes twinkled mischievously. My brow scrunched as I tried to find anything good in what had so far transpired, or what I'd been told. "Because," my mom said, clearly seeing I was coming up empty, "it's not just the bad dreams our hearts can bring to life." She smiled, placing a hand upon my cheek rubbing small circles against my skin with her thumb. It's the good ones, too. Veil of Night. "I've said too much," Caroline exclaimed. She snatched her rain-soaked black denim jacket from the chair and turned to go. "Caroline, wait!" Hank caught her hand. Her slender fingers felt chill and damp against his. "You can't expect me to believe." "No," she murmured. "No one would. And that's the point. It was useless even coming here. I don't know why I did." Hank squeezed her limp fingers, giving them a shake. "Please, let's start over," he said, motioning for her to sit again. "This cult, it's a coven. The Sisterhood of Unhallowed Light." She fidgeted with a lock of damp, auburn hair stuck to her pale forehead. "Right, the Sisterhood. So, a few women who get together and play at witchcraft? There are 12. They wanted me to join, and I thought I wanted that too. But Caroline caught her bottom lip between her teeth. The midnight hue of her black lipstick was a stark contrast to the pallor of her skin. She took a breath, and the words tumbled from her. "I feel seen by them, like they really get me. They accept me. They celebrate me, just as I am. And what they offer, the sense of belonging, the knowledge, power. I thought, why shouldn't I?" A flash of lightning lit the rain-spattered window, with a crack of thunder following close behind. Caroline's eyes grew large with panic, and she twisted in her seat to look outside. "There are things we shouldn't play with," she whimpered. "I know that now. I've completed 2 of the 3 initiation rituals with the Sisterhood. And you're saying this torrential rain we've been having these past 3 days is part of that? That's awfully biblical, isn't it?" "This isn't hurricane season, Hank," he shrugged and twisted his mouth in a half-ways grin. "With weather patterns these days, who can tell what season it is anymore?" "It was me. It was the Sisterhood. It's part of the ritual, part of the summoning. Coincidence, that's all." She clutched his arm where the sleeve of his t-shirt ended, digging her cold, clammy fingers into his bicep, and pleaded, "You wouldn't say that if you knew what I've done, what I've gone through to make this happen." "Caroline," she let go of Hank's arm and fumbled with the top buttons of her black shirt. Yanking one half of it to her left side, she exposed part of her chest. A long vertical slash was bisected by a shorter one, forming an inverted cross over her heart. The 2 slashes stood out as angry purplish-red marks on her otherwise smooth, pale flesh, and were knitted together with black stitches. They made me promise my heart to Valthus, the formless entity of writhing darkness whom they worship. Hank stared for a moment, then sputtered, "Valthus? Your heart? Come on, Caroline. What? Am I supposed to believe they've cut out your heart? Isn't it usually the soul these sort of fanatics are after?" Caroline grasped Hank's fingers in her trembling hand and placed his palm over the wound on her chest. Her skin was unnaturally cool. He held his hand there for a moment, then brought his fingers up to her throat, feeling for a pulse. Another clap of thunder startled them both. Hank pulled his hand from Caroline's neck. He stared at her in disbelief, saying, "This is some kind of joke. A prank. It's not real. How could you be here telling me all this if they've taken out your heart?" "I don't know," she sobbed. "But I think I've made an awful mistake. You've got to help me. Promise you won't let them take me." "No, of course not. Where would they take you anyway? A hospital? It's an abandoned old church, Blackthorn Chapel. They want to take me there for the final ritual," Caroline said. "To complete the summoning of Valthus, they need to make an offering of the heart." "But aren't you supposed to be joining them? Becoming one of their coven? This sounds more like a sacrifice." "Yes, it does. They told me it was my initiation, but..." Caroline trailed off, turning to stare at the rain beating against the window. In a low whisper, she continued, "Now I'm not so sure. That's why I'm frightened." The blinding flash of light lit up the nearby window, and a deafening roar of thunder shook the house. A loud crash followed. Nearby, a car horn began sounding, repeating its alarm annoyingly. Hank leapt to his feet and crossed the room to look outside. Christ, that was close. The tree next door has split nearly in two. Some of its limbs have fallen over a few cars on the street. The lights inside the house flickered. Once, twice, and a third time before plunging them into darkness. "I'll get some candles," Hank said, cursing as he caught his toe on some piece of furniture. He fumbled his way to the kitchen. "Just need to find my phone so I can light the way." One more thunderclap boomed overhead. A sudden blast of wind swirled through the house. Footsteps pounded across the floor. Caroline shrieked, and there were sounds of a struggle from the other room. "No!" Caroline cried out. "I won't go! Hank, don't let them take me." Hank stumbled from the kitchen and could see down the hallway to the front door. It was swung wide open, and the wind and rain swept through in howling gusts. "Caroline?" Hank called out. He heard glass shattering all around him. The back of his head felt like an explosion had gone off, and the world tilted and shifted into slow motion. Hank sank to his knees. His vision was filled with a combination of swirling stars and inky blackness. The sounds of frantic struggle moved away from him as his hands slapped the carpeted floor. He struggled to breathe and clear his sight as he held himself from pitching forward onto his face. "Caroline!" he shouted. His head throbbed viciously, and he thought he might be sick. From outside, he heard car doors slamming, and a vehicle roared to life. He struggled to his feet and made it to the front door. Through the sheets of rain, he saw the burning glow of red tail lights receding down his street. Pursuit wasn't an easy option. The tree limbs, which had fallen over several cars, were blocking Hank's car as well. He slashed at them with a hatchet he had stowed in his camping gear. The rest of the fallen limbs tore at the side and undercarriage of Hank's car, but he managed to break free. He swore and cursed some more. The lousy cell service the storm had left him with made searching the internet difficult. After several minutes, he found directions to and a description of Blackthorn Chapel on a website promoting ghost walks in the city. Once a place of worship, the old chapel had fallen into disrepair, and the ground beneath was, so the locals claimed, cursed. It took nearly an hour to detour around storm debris and reroute past streets that had been rendered impassable before he arrived at his destination. If he'd paid the $50 for the Ghost Walk tour, Blackthorn Chapel would have rated 5 stars. It was surrounded by an overgrown and tangled hedge of blackthorn shrubs, buffeted by the wind and rain. The gnarled limbs seemed to claw at the twilit sky, as though grasping at something unseen. The crumbling stone walls were cracked and weathered. The roof was partially caved in, showing an outline of jagged edges that looked like the jaws of some wild beast snarling or snapping at the heavens. And the heavy wooden doors were worn and splintered and hanging slightly ajar on great rusted iron hinges. The jet-black gloom beyond the entrance seemed more of warning to sensible folk rather than an invitation to step inside. But if there was any chance he might save Caroline, inside was where Hank needed to be. He passed through an opening in the rough hedge, careful not to let the thorns sink their barbs into him. Walking in through the front entrance, he'd decided, would be courting failure. He might as well put his head through a noose. Instead, Hank crept around to the side of the run-down property, searching for another way into the chapel. Lightning lit the horizon several miles off. The brief flash revealed to him that he was creeping through a graveyard, which was part of the chapel grounds. Most of the headstones were crooked, sinking into the ground. Some had fallen or been knocked over. Many lay half-buried in tufted humps of wild grass. With a sense of dread, he picked his way carefully through the tangle of ancient stones and grass until he was out of the graveyard and could lean against the chapel wall. His heart was pounding as he panted silently, trying to catch his breath. Above the howling of the storm, a sound caught his ear. Soft at first, but regular, insistent, and coming from inside the chapel. Hank strained to make out what he was hearing. It was definitely chanting of some sort. Hank edged along the stone wall to the back of the crumbling old building. The ground sloped down, revealing the foundations of the chapel. He spotted a break in the wall and rushed to it. It was a narrow space, but large enough, he felt, to squeeze inside. Before he did so, Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand. He couldn't imagine actually using it to hack away at some unseen coven member. That would be slasher movie extreme. He twisted it around in his hand so that the square end faced out, becoming his weapon. He sucked in a few deep breaths, questioning his sanity. Then he scraped and squeezed his way through the narrow space. Feeling his way around in the dark, Hank discovered a series of long wooden boxes. Great, he thought. Could this night get any spookier? He'd found his way into the crypt. It took him a few minutes to pick his way around, but he eventually found a set of stairs leading to the proper part of the chapel. This was one of the cloisters, or side chapels. The chanting was more distinct. He could make out the words, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light from the maw, where silence dies. Open now your 1,000 eyes." He edged carefully toward a gap in the wall, which entered into the chapel's nave. There were broken pews scattered throughout the space, casting long shadows from the candles, which lit up the altar at the front. Shadow deep and shadow wide, stretch the fold, let worlds collide. What was whole? Let it decca, let the void now have its way. He saw Carolyn, bound and gagged. She was wide-eyed and frantic, struggling to break free of her bonds. Unseen horror, whispered breath, we call you forth. We offer death, one by one, we fade. We kneel, take our names, unmake us real. A quick count revealed only 8 figures in hooded robes surrounding Caroline. He thought she'd said they were 12 in number. But this would be better odds. Hank hefted the hatchet in his hand one more time, feeling as confident as a person could ever be faced with such a scene. He took one step forward, but that was as far as he got. He was grasped from behind, his arms, legs, and even his torso in the grip of unseen talon-like hands. With swift force, they pulled him backwards, throwing him off balance. A ragged cloth was pressed over his nose and mouth. He struggled and tried to scream. Then blackness engulfed him. When he came to, Hank found he was now stretched out over the altar. His hands and feet were bound. Looking up, he could see eerie shadows playing across the vaulted arch above. "I'm sorry, Hank," Caroline said. "I had to do it." He snapped his head around in the direction of her voice and saw she was standing to his left. She held a long, curved dagger in her hands. The other coven members, all 12 of them now, were surrounding him. We needed a heart to complete my initiation and call down Valthis." He thought he'd known fear earlier in his pursuit of Caroline's attackers. Now, a choking sensation that felt like ice was spreading through his chest. In his head, Hank shouted Caroline's name, but the gag in his mouth prevented him from getting that or any other words that followed out. The coven members began to chant once more, "Valthis, Valthis, veil of night, drown the stars, consume the light, under the kitchen sink." Spoiler, but a scare warning. MC and other characters talk about being knocked out and a near death from a spider bite. Very mild. Fictional story, but based on Orthodox Christian spiritual warfare. It was a Saturday afternoon when I was 13. My friend Lila and I were playing hide-and-go-seek at her house. Lila was my new friend, but she was fun to hang out with. I also had a friend named Aiden. He was my best friend since I was little, like really little. He looks the same age as me, but he always acted a lot older. He was scared about me going places I shouldn't, and that I should be careful. But he said that a lot with Lila, because I never told my mom about me visiting her. But I thought, as long as I got back between the 2 hours, I got off school, and she got home from work, she would never find out. Lila counted while I tried to find a hiding spot in her big, empty house. My feet echoed as I ran around, and then I found a room under the stairs. I giggled as I closed the door and hid in between some old clothes, a vacuum, a laundry hamper, and the washing machine. "Torrid, D930, ready or not, here I come!" Ain't no way she is going to find me here. I bet she's afraid of the "I found you," she yelped as she opened the door. "What? How did you find me? This had to have been the best hiding spot." Lila waved her hand and said, "That's not the best one. That one is quite easy to find." I got up and dusted my pants off. And as I walked out, I closed the creaky door. Then I asked her, "What is the best hiding spot?" Now, why would I tell you that? Because then you would know how to find me. But do you want to know? But the way she said it, it made me really want to know. "Please, please, please tell me. I won't hide there. I just want to see it." Lila whipped her dark hair and tapped her finger to her chin. "You may not want to hide there, but you will probably stay there for some time when you see it." I was confused, but it still made me want to go even more. "Follow me, my friend," she said, reaching for my hand. We went past the front door of her house and through the entryway to her kitchen. I hopped on the white tiles as I followed her, and she let me go. "Are you ready?" she asked. "Mm-hmm," I nodded excitedly. She then reached into the pocket of her black coat and pulled out an old key. Then she walked to the weirdest spot ever, her kitchen sink. She bent down to this big lock and fat chains and popped the key in and turned it like it was easy. Then she slowly opened the doors, but with a smile that was weirdly excited for me to see it. And once the doors are opened, I hear a loud whooshing sound and what looked like a big black hole. Whoa! How come I've never seen this before? Has anybody seen it before? Oh yeah, a lot of people have, but only people who choose to listen to me instead of, well, don't mind that. Go ahead and go inside. But where does it go? It won't hurt, will it? I don't want to do things that I know I shouldn't and get hurt. You'll be okay, you promise? Lila said. Look at all the fun games we play together behind your mom's back. Trust me, this is what you want. I felt scared, but I wanted to believe her. I took a few steps toward the sink, and the closer I got, the closer I felt like it was pulling me in, and it was harder to get away. Dee Dee, I heard a voice from above me. Huh? I look up and get a push back from the sink, and the doors slam closed on their own. Before I looked at the voice, I got a quick look at Lila, who quickly put down her foot like she was going to do something, but she didn't want me to see it. I turned around, and in the window above the sink, I saw Aiden looking at me. He had reddish-brown hair, and when the sun hit it, it looked like it was a bright fire. He said with a worried face, "Why are you here? I warned you not to come here." "Oh, we were just having a little fun. You'll get hurt." Before I could say anything, he looked over to Lila and said, "What are you doing?" "Exploring." "Why do you have to ruin the fun?" He answered, "You are a stranger." "A stranger?" "Me and Dee Dee are best friends, better friends than you. Clearly, she makes more time for me than you. Besides, how long have you known her for?" "Since she was baptized." Lila seemed really mad at his answer. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to hurt Aiden's feelings, but I really wanted to have fun. When I looked at Aiden again, he already looked like he was sad because of what she said. And I was scared that what she said was true. I didn't want it to be. I glance over to the big, old clock on the wall and realize that my mom would be home any minute. I look at them both and say, "I have to get home." Aiden told me, "Maybe you should tell your mom about this." I shook my head and said, "No, she would get so mad at me." Aiden didn't seem to like that I said that, but said, "Your choice. Dee Dee, your choice." Then he walked away from the window. I ran home as fast as I could. And thankfully, I got there just in time. I don't think my mom knew at all where I had been. I just acted normal, and we enjoyed dinner together. She even asked, "So how was school today, honey? I heard you had a hard time on the test." I knew I could have done better, but I felt so sleepy. And I think it was from not telling Mom about Lila and keeping it a secret made me tired and not think well. "It was decimals," I told her. She put her fork down and said, "But you're so good at decimals." She looked confused and said, "Dee Dee, you seem to be having a hard time in school lately. Not just with the test, but with things you know, and know really well." I felt warm. I had to come up with something without telling my secret. I've been doing extra homework, so I stay up late and get sleepy. She didn't seem to like that very much. Listen, Dee Dee, I want you to be doing your homework when you get home from school, not late in the night. You need your sleep, and you should have plenty of time after school to do it, right? The whole time she talked, I kept thinking about Lila's kitchen sink. What was under there? Where did it go? Was it really as bad as Aiden made it out to be? Dee Dee, Dee Dee. My mom snapped me out of my thinking. Look, hun, you need to finish up and go get some rest. Homework in the afternoon and sleep at night. That's all. I got on the bathroom stool to brush my teeth, and I went to say my prayers. As I did, I had a really bad feeling that I didn't usually have. I felt bad about how I treated Aiden earlier. I hoped he still wanted to be my friend. I turned the switch on my small blue lamp. And as I went to bed, I threw the covers over my head. My blonde hair got in my face as I curled up, confused about my day. Psst! I didn't think anything of it and closed my eyes tightly. Psst! That time was too loud. I threw my blanket off to look around my room. Then I saw someone in the window again. But it wasn't Aiden. Lila stood on the roof outside my window and said, "Hey, you're up." "Lila? What are you doing here? It's past my bedtime." I began to speak in a whisper as I looked really quickly toward my cracked bedroom door. My mom might still be up. Bedtime, schmed time. It doesn't matter as long as you don't get caught. Don't you want to see that portal? But Aiden said not to. Lila rolled her eyes and said, "Aiden isn't saying that because he is worried. Aiden just doesn't want you to have any fun." "But come on, you don't want to be a scaredy cat, do you? You can do what you want. You wanted to see the hiding spot yourself. Remember?" With the last word, she said, her eyes lit up. But it wasn't in a good way. I really wanted to see what that black hole was. Maybe she was right. I can do what I want. We were back in her kitchen. She had led me out of my house by a rope she tied to the roof, and I had no idea where it came from. "Are you ready this time?" she asked. I nodded, even though I was really scared, and my heart beat faster than it had beaten. She opened the cabinet doors again, and I was greeted by the loud sound and twirling portal. I slowly tippy-toed toward it, closer and closer and closer. Then Lila pushed me. She grunted. I screamed the loudest scream, and I don't think anyone heard me. As I began to fall down into the dark space, I saw a ledge and held onto it, trying not to let go, because I knew if I fell any further, no one could help me. I turned around, and the last thing I saw was Lila. But it wasn't Lila. She had turned into a nasty creature with horns and a long tongue, and her eyes did the same thing they did when she came to get me from my house. That's what happens when you mess around where you shouldn't while passing on. And she closed the cabinet. I screamed and screamed and screamed, but it just echoed at me. I yelled for someone to help me, but no one was there. I should have listened to Aiden. I yelled again, now crying loudly. I should have listened. The last thing I could think of was to say a prayer. I knew I felt guilt the last time I prayed, but I knew I still had to. I pulled down my nightcap with one hand, but quickly put my hand back on the ledge. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me, a sinner. Slam! The cabinets swung open, and there I saw what looked like an angel. Who are you? It's me, Aiden, but you don't look like... Then it made sense. He acted older. He knew me since I was baptized, and he was always trying to keep me safe. You're my guardian angel? One hand slipped, and I was holding on by one hand. Take my hand, and I can help you. I struggled to pull my hand up. I pulled and pulled, and finally, I slapped mine into his, and he pulled me out within the blink of an eye. And again, the cabinet slammed shut. He grabbed me to help me brace for the impact as we hit the floor. I gasped and slowly got up, feeling like I was just beaten up. What just happened? Where is Lila? What did she mean by passing on? Dee Dee, you saw. Lila isn't a human girl. She's a demon, and she went back where she belongs. And I am your guardian angel assigned to you. I've been trying to keep you safe. You almost died. You are knocked out at the moment, and soon you will wake up. I thought my next question would be, how did I die? But he answered before I could ask. The first time you came towards the portal, you were near a nest of spiders, poisonous ones. And because you had disobeyed, and how close he had become to Lila, you put yourself in a very dangerous position. But I pulled you away. This time around, one bit you, and it was almost enough to kill you. But thank the Lord you prayed when you did, before it was too late. Or we'd be in a different situation. I thought about it. If I had passed, it would have been 3 days, and then it would have been the toll houses. And I certainly wasn't ready for them yet. I was shocked. But this is all happening, right? How about hide and seek? What happened with that? It still happened, but you were the only one who could see Lila and me as well. But the portal itself exists, but not in the way you thought may have at first. I stood there and sat back down. What do I do now? What I've told you to do is be honest and listen to those who are trying to protect you. We stopped talking for a minute. I needed to take a moment to think about what happened. We both looked at the moon, and my last question was, when will I wake up? Just keep looking up, he said. Your mom will come to find you here safe. And will I see you again? He looked at me and smiled and said, just continue to live as you should. I will always be here to protect you. In the name of the park, They say you never really know what someone is like. Not truly. Life has a funny way of showing you. Coincidences, they call them. Those little twists of fate that seem too good to be true. Like how, just as the park started filling up with the wrong kinds of people, they all began to disappear, one by one. Strange, isn't it? I've lived here for decades, in this little house with its flower boxes and its white shutters, watching the seasons change, watching the people come and go at the park across the street. For so long, the park was perfect. Flowers bloomed each spring, and the trees provided shade for the frolicking that took place under them. The good people were always there, the ones who respected it. There was Mrs. Calloway, who had walked her poodle, Franz, at the same time every morning for 20 years. There was George, the retired schoolteacher, who read his newspaper on the same bench while sipping his thermos of coffee. The mothers with their strollers, the elderly couples arm in arm, the joggers who nodded politely as they passed. These were my people. But then the bad ones came. First, it was the teenagers, those little delinquents with their cigarettes and their loud music, loitering around the swings, leaving their garbage behind. They carved their nonsense into the benches, foul words that I won't repeat, marking their territory like stray dogs. I scolded them at first, wagging my finger, telling them they should be ashamed. They only laughed. They had no respect for anything. Not for me, not for the park, not for the memories of the good people who had been there before them. But they weren't laughing for long. Then came the couple. The awful couple who would play disc golf and argue the entire time. He was a burly man with a voice like a fehorn, and she was a waifish thing, shrill and unrelenting like a bird. They didn't just argue, they screamed, and I even think they smoked marijuana. I would try to enjoy my walks, but their voices would pierce through the trees, ruining everything. Clem, Ollie, and Marcus, my Yorkies, would cower in fear as they approached us. It was always about money, or about some other woman, or about how she was ungrateful. And he was a brute. She used much more colorful language. The sound of their discs clattering against metal, mixed with their venomous words, polluting the air. Their presence felt like a stain on what should have been a sanctuary, a place of peace. I could almost hear the park groaning under their weight. And then there were the worst ones of all. The dealers. I noticed them sneaking into the park, lurking by the back benches where the trees grew thickest. They wore hoodies, their eyes darting around as they exchanged small bags for crumpled bills. I knew exactly what was happening. I'd seen enough crime reports to recognize the signs, and to think they were doing this when there were children and teenagers in the vicinity. The neighborhood wasn't safe anymore. My park wasn't safe. I saw them whispering to people who passed by, shifting anxiously, always watching their backs. I knew their kind. I had seen the stories on the news. Violence always followed them, and the police did nothing, and yet people ignored it. They walked past, either too afraid or too indifferent to say anything. I called our local police station, and they only told me they would send an officer to check it out. I will tell you, this did not happen. As I watched from my window and saw no police officers in the area, I did report this as well, but I knew the truth. If you want something done right, you must do it yourself. I had to do something. You can never judge a book by its cover, they say. People look at me and they see an old woman, slightly hunched, dressed in my sensible sweaters and shoes, walking my 3 little dogs. They see my tidy house with the white shutters and the flower boxes, and they assume I am exactly what I appear to be. They don't see the woman who was married to a cruel man for 20 years, who learned how to endure, how to be patient, how to bide her time until the right moment came, who realized sometimes something must be lost to be gained, as was the case in preserving peace for my 3 sons. They don't see the woman who grew up on a farm, who learned early how to break a chicken's neck in one swift motion. They don't know how strong my hands really are. Desperate times call for desperate measures, don't they? The teenagers were first. It wasn't hard. One of them, a particularly mouthy one with a sneer that made my blood boil, was walking home alone one night. It was almost too easy. A single strike with the tire iron I kept in my shed, and he crumpled like a rag doll. He and his friends did not hang out at the park after that, so far as I could tell. It was strange how quickly the others took the hint. The arguing couple was next. I followed them, listening to their voices rise in fury. They were on the edge of the park, past the old fence, where no one went anymore. She was crying, and he was yelling, his voice shaking the leaves. I didn't even hesitate. A push was all it took, just one push, and his big, lumbering body toppled over the edge of the ravine. The silence was so sudden, it was almost beautiful. It was as if the park could finally exhale. She turned to me, eyes wide, lips trembling. I thought she would scream, but she didn't. She ran. And I let her, because I knew she wouldn't tell. Women like her know better than to cross women like me. And maybe she will use this second chance to make some better life choices. The dealers were harder. They moved in groups, cautious, always looking over their shoulders. But people like them, they get greedy. They trust the wrong people. One by one, they fell. Each disappearance, a small victory. The police didn't even look into it too hard. Junkies, they called them. No big loss. I made sure they disappeared quietly. A little patience, a little careful planning. No one questioned it. You wouldn't suspect I could even be capable of these deeds. The park is quiet now. The good people have returned, along with the lilac blooms and the koi fish in the pond. Mrs. Calloway walks Franz without fear. George reads his paper in peace. The mothers push their strollers without looking over their shoulders. Their babies have grown and play freely on the park equipment without having to read rubbish. Soon, a new batch of these little lambs will be springing about. The joggers smile again. It's so nice that the park has cleaned up, they say. Feels safe again. Isn't it amazing that all those rough types just stopped coming here? I wonder what happened, Mrs. Calloway mentioned yesterday, as we paused to dispose of our dog droppings before exiting the park. I smile back, but then, just as we step onto the sidewalk, I notice something. A new teenager sitting on the swings, head down, hoodie pulled tight, just sitting, watching. I grip the leash in my hands, my knuckles whitening, because it is safe, and I intend to keep it that way. See you soon, Claire. You didn't think you could just leave, did you? I've always known where you were. That little bus station in the city, that motel with the flickering sign on the side of the motorway. I was watching you, even then. How you clutch your bag when you sleep. How you leave the TV on static to drown out the sound of your thoughts. You're clever, slippery, but not clever enough. I have to admit, you know how to cover your tracks. But you should know that you can't shake off your own tail. You're not running away from me. You're running toward me. You'll see soon. Sweet dreams. Wow. Creepy. Not sure how you got this address, but congrats, I guess. Nice to know I'm living rent-free in your head. FYI, the bus station smelled like pee, and the motel had roaches. So maybe put your stalking budget toward better accommodations next time. Only, of course, if there is a next time. But I wouldn't get my hopes up if I were you. Also, if you're going to kill me, maybe don't warn me first. That's kind of, I don't know, sloppy. Anyway, I've got to go. I'm going on a hitchhiking date with a guy named Dave. He says he's got a van. Don't worry, I checked, and there's no candy. Best, Claire. Thanks, son. Dave has a record. 2 assaults. 1 missing person case. You're not as sharp as you think. Do you know how easy it would be for me to get to you? To pull you from that van before Dave even knows what's happening? The door's unlocked. Sleep tight. Very funny. Except you can't be outside because I'm writing this from the bathroom at a gas station. And I'm pretty sure the only person outside is the clerk on his smoke break. Unless you've taken up vaping? Mint flavored, I hope. But seriously, do you actually think this whole mysterious stalker act is working? Because from where I'm sitting, on a suspiciously sticky toilet seat, by the way, you owe me for that. You sound kind of desperate, following me across 3 states, tracking my every move, writing me these cryptic little notes like some kind of B-list Bond villain. Feels like a lot of effort for someone who insists they're the one in control. And if you know so much, if you've been watching me this whole time, tell me this. Why am I running? Seriously. Enlighten me. You should know why, unless you don't, which would mean you're not half as smart as you think you are. I need to stop writing now, since someone's knocking on the stall door, and I don't feel like explaining why I've been loitering in the bathroom with a notepad. Best, Claire, you're running because you're scared, but not of me. The thing you're running from is already in the room with you. Turn around. Right there. I think you've got this whole dynamic twisted. You think I'm scared of you? Cute. You've been following me, sure. But have you noticed the trail of bodies in my wake? Dave made it exactly 27 miles before he swerved into a ditch. Poor guy. Guess he shouldn't have tried to pull that knife. The clerk at the gas station. You'll see his face on the news soon. Well, most of it. So yeah, maybe I'm running, but not from you. You're not hunting me. I'm hunting you. See you soon. Interesting. You always were a quick study. I underestimated you. My mistake. But you're wrong about one thing. I'm not hunting you anymore. I'm inviting you. There's a cabin in the woods, just outside the circus. Red door, broken window. I'll leave the door unlocked. If you're as brave as you think you are, come find me. Or maybe I'll find you first. By circus, you mean the festival extravaganza, right? Cute. I'll bring wine, and maybe a shovel. See you soon, Claire. Yeah, I knew you'd come. I saw you the second you stepped into the woods. That red jacket of yours stands out in the dark like a beacon. You really should have chosen something less noticeable, or maybe you wanted me to see you. Either way, you're here now. I left a present for you. I thought I might as well give you a chance. The knife I pinned this letter down with is all yours. I trust you know how to use it. Do you feel it? The cold sinking into your bones? The silence pressing down on you? That sound behind you? The snap of a branch that wasn't an animal. You've been so clever up to this point, so slippery, so sharp. But even the smartest prey makes a mistake eventually, and you've just made yours. Don't bother running. I'm already behind you. You're right. I felt you the moment I crossed the tree line. I knew you were there. I could almost hear your breathing. Shallow, controlled, waiting. But you made a mistake, too. You let me get too close. I know it's rude. But I'm going to have to return you kind gift. A girl can't have too many of a good thing, or it gets boring. I felt the heat of your breath on the back of my neck, and I smiled, because I'm not scared of you anymore. Not that I ever was, and you'll never get the chance to write me again. A clever girl, but not clever enough. See you soon. An incident report. Missing person. Claire Marie Jenkins. Location: isolated cabin. Festival extravaganza. Details: the cabin was found empty upon arrival. Blood splatters were present, but no bodies recovered. Signs of struggle. One broken window. Unidentified footprints lead into the woods. No return tracks. A single sheet of paper was discovered, pinned to the cabin wall with a knife. It read, "Not yet. Claire is presently missing at time of report. Background checks show that she must have changed her identity. Or she didn't have any family, immediate or extended. Case remains open. The man in the lake. Since I was a child, I've feared him deeply, though I've never laid eyes upon his elusive person. I can remember vividly walking along the narrow trail that surrounded Lake Victory during the Ides of October. The water, dormant and as reflective as glass, was enraged by the fiery reds of the perishing leaves that clung desperately to the maples surrounding it. If you glanced from a distance, you'd think it was a pit of lava, scorching through the center of the earth, from the leaves that already pirouetted to the ground. A magnificent blanket of gold and orange stretched invitingly along at your feet. Consequently, as the trees became more barren, the seasonal breeze squeezed between the branches, knocking together their nimble limbs. With its powerful grasp, the whooshing breath of Mother Nature would envelop all sounds within an ear's distance of man. This type of silence was cathartic. If you closed your eyes, you could become coalesced with its gentle movement, as a spider web would become accessorized against the unbeknownst skin. The random assortment of sounds stemming from birds, the splashing of fish, an acorn falling from the tree, the ominous sounds of swaying, narrow trees like a rusted seesaw, or the mercurial patter of rain echoing against the wilted leaves, producing a light bass that was rhythmically harmonious to the ear. My grandfather always mentioned this man was always present, but you had to search persistently without fear or a cluttered mind. There was always talk of a dock, though the far side of the lake was unrecognizable from the conception, with its bends and curves to and from sight. He always said, not many find this man in Lake Victory, that it takes a special kind of person to gain his trust. The man was full of wisdom, distinguished, and had the ultimate answer to life's enigmas, he claimed. That he had experienced the greatest challenges man can face. I used to circle this lake frequently as a child, climbing trees for a better view, skipping rocks to alert him of my presence, and whatever other racket I could concoct to make myself evident as far as I could muster the courage to. Of course, this came to no avail. In my mind, the imagery of this man had always changed. Some days, he would be terrifyingly tall, his limbs slender, and his eyes were always hidden underneath a low-positioned straw hat. Other days, he would have a becoming face, accentuated by a tinge of red from physical exertion. I pictured him growing corn in small patches, picking berries from wild bushes, and fishing regularly from his forsaken dock. A fire would be ablaze during his nights, where he would sit complacently, listening to the crickets and the sounds of night. As I went through high school and college, the distraction and monotony of life had guided me far away from Lake Victory, in search of material things, to chase a dream enriched by hollow rapacity. My family's vacation home had become a distant memory. I no longer needed to acquaint this man during the fall, because he no longer could fill the void inside of my heart as he would in my youth. Or so I thought. I figured that new quest, with all the goals I had set for myself to accomplish, would provide far more solace than the man in the lake. I riddled myself with distraction, so much so I was afraid to be alone with my own thoughts, praying my responsibilities and egocentric monsters that loomed behind would never catch up to my incessant steps and thoughts. However, when things that provide no internal peace reach an expulsion point, there comes the burnout. It wasn't until I was 37 that for the first time in my life, I began to feel the weight of time bearing down upon my slouched and exhausted shoulders. It was quite amazing when I returned, how the lake had never lost its luster. However, it is also true that not many know of this lake's whereabouts. Furthermore, it would be bizarre to even encounter another bystander in your journeys around its trail. It wasn't long before I started to realize that the wonderful colors that encapsulate nature never truly lose its vigor. Only the man-made things in life itself begin to fade as your optimism and naivety of being young dissipates as you embrace the harsh realities of existence. The future remembers history in black and white, though those who lived it always can revisit the palette that painted their peaks, whether the ravishing color of their wives' eyes when they first met, the color of their first vehicle sitting, sparkling in the driveway, or his father's blue flannel shirt, always rolled up to the elbow as he returned home from work. I remember spotting the rays of the sun streaming through the naked branches, placing my hand within its warm consultation like I did as a child. My pallid flesh began to glow as an orb would, the light bending around and through my stretched fingers as I tried to ball it up and capture it within my selfish fist. The trees, though still gallant and strong, were showing signs of age then. Their bark had become brittle and fissured. The base of some of these trees had become cavernous, offering safe haven for the smaller critters. I reflected on my own appearance, with the subtle lines beginning to formulate below and beside the eyes. the random sprouts of gray hair poking through my sideburns, and the pouch of flesh that had grown dormant around my waist. I, too, was succumbing to life's greatest guarantee, and I reflected upon my mortality as I rested my hand against the withering bark in passing. The man in the lake must be growing old. It was then that again I was enlivened by the man himself as I began to intake the fresh air. Surely in my adulthood I could find this man, who must be very old himself, and not as evasive as he was many, many years before. Those creaks and snapping of branches under the light prancing of the deer would set my heart ablaze, gawking maniacally and frozen still, hoping to finally catch a glimpse of this folklore. The ground was still forgiving to my steps, still fecund from the week's rain, and my soles glided effortlessly across the discarded tapestry of leaves as they did when I was young. And through certain partitions between the blinding trees, you could catch a swooping heron, the elongated neck, saintly patience, and aloof demeanor, awaiting the perfect moment to spear its beak into unsuspecting prey, just as they had in early summers. I remember the trail was as underutilized as ever at 37, stumbling atop exposed roots and stubbing my toe against jagged rock. I had been swimming through the thickets, gently whipped by the returning force, though I continued to push further than I'd ever had as a child. It wasn't long then before that allure and optimism that guided my clairvoyance towards the man in the lake previously was becoming shrouded by the enclosing nature surrounding my steps. Briefly, I remembered pausing within a small pocket of land, like an atrium within the center of the forest, and weighed my options going forward. I concluded that maybe my grandfather made up this man in the lake, that maybe I knew this all along and held on to this anecdote, like one holds on to an old shirt from his past, attached to the memories it harnessed. It was then I turned towards the trail where I had come from. Then I craned my neck towards the hazardous continuance just ahead. Something within was battling, opposing forces destined for different destinies, though I allowed my city-wrought mind to win the battle once again. I turned back towards my vehicle, leaving the man behind once again. Now, I am 79. I've raised children, paid off my mortgage, made all the money one can make to live a satisfied life. However, something was gnawing in the confines of my mind. The man in the lake. Here I was again. The trail was non-existent now, but I allowed what was left of my memory to guide me towards my former footsteps upon weakened limbs. Some of the trees now had fallen, and Lake Victory was as exposed as it ever had been, as I gingerly stepped around the detriments of my journey. In brief increments, the past would flash before my eyes, and through my childhood eyes, I was allotted the opportunity to see Lake Victory in all of its former glory. My breathing was heavy, my hands calloused as I tightly grasped my walking stick. My calves were aching tremendously, though my heart thumped with the excitement and fervency of a teen. I knew this was my last opportunity. The fall always seemed to leave me speechless. How could it be? Something that I've witnessed dozens of times still enraged my love for this very earth, just as it had the first time. It was the essence of beauty, natural, pure in all of its forms, and I was appreciative that it only climaxed for a few weeks. Things of such enchantment are usually ephemeral, undeserving of the burden of obsolescence. The woman you meet in a foreign land, gone before you awake in the morning. The feeling on a motorcycle, with your hair in the wind, barely avoiding death, and the war cry that follows, with your heart nearly shattering your rib cage. It was superior to all, because it was effortless. It was the cycle of life itself. The atrium was still present, though it had shrunken to barely enough room for an elderly man such as myself. This time, I trudged through the webbing of branches and shrubbery, my face becoming sliced, and my hands bloodied by their sharp teeth. I could see the sun breaking through, about 20 feet ahead. This must have been where the man lived. I broke through the remaining brush, out into an open field. The purple and yellow flowers arched from their nesting spots, swallowed by the remaining green of October that survived by a water source. I looked upwards, glad to see the sun, receptive to its blanketing of my worn flesh. Then I looked towards the water once again, and there it was, the aforementioned dock. However, I was now forlorn, spotting no cabin in the woods, nor anywhere that a man could survive in such circumstances. I did not see his corn, nor his burn pit, where he spent his nights. I've spent my whole life in retrospect, always comparing myself to the man in the lake, his humble attitude, his love for nature, his ability to acquire happiness without material things. His lore kept me grounded to reality. And now I was faced with the harsh truth that his existence was never crafted by veracity. Nor was this apotheosis one in which I dreamed many times before. I harped upon why my grandfather would speak so greatly of him, as if a friend. Why allow me to go on these wild goose chases, hoping to encounter some begrimed being, steeped in desolation? I approached the dock apprehensively, acknowledging its worn and derelict bones, the way it slouched towards the right side, and how the algae grew rampantly across its damp surface. I took a careful step and stopped, now hearing the lapping water gently clapping against the embankment taking along with it the atrophied leaves, as a Viking would be sent off during his death. I took another step, stopping once again, surprised by the stability with a poke of my stick, and then decided upon shuffling towards the very edge. Here I stood, looking out over the lake that had held such a prized position within my heart. I looked down towards the surface of my hands, with all of the wrinkles and liver spots that come regretfully with age. Then I looked around the lake, witnessing its vitality once again. I understood that though some of the trees would tumble, that this very dock itself will eventually surrender to entropy, that the man in the lake may have been a farce, that ultimately I was eternally grateful for everything it had provided me in my life. I closed my eyes, taking a deep breath, feeling the brisk air searching through my lungs. As I exhaled greatly, there was a surge of enlightenment that had imbued a deep revelation just as I had opened my eyes. And it was at this moment I knew I had found the man in the lake. As I looked down, just ahead of the last portion of the dock, I saw my reflection within the still water. The white hair that whisked away with the gentlest of breezes. The thick, clouded glasses that stretched across my eyes. My hunched disposition barely holding up underneath my trembling legs. This fascinating search for a character that had lived deep within all of our souls. One stripped bare of the repressed angst and uncertainty that haunted us all outside of this mystical place. With all of its simplicity and understanding of life that one tends to convolute upon their odyssey towards enlightenment. This was the ultimate lesson, and it took a lifetime to understand. I was the man in the lake, just as my grandpa had once been, and maybe one day you will be too. The day Los Angeles. Changed Sophia's spoon clinked against porcelain as she stirred her tea, the sound barely audible beneath the morning bustle of the morning brew. Outside the window, autumn painted the small town of San Bernardino in shades of amber and gold. So different from Los Angeles, where even fall seemed reluctant to interrupt the city's relentless energy. "You're stirring that tea to death," her mother observed, eyes crinkling with gentle humor. "Still not sleeping well?" Sophia looked up, caught in the act. Serenity Williams had always possessed an uncanny ability to read her daughter, even as cancer steadily claimed her strength. Today was a good day. Her mother sat upright without assistance, her silver-streaked hair neatly combed, her smile warm despite the hollowness in her cheeks. "Claire's having nightmares again," Sophia admitted. "And Mark's firm is restructuring, which means longer hours. I'm not sure this was the right time to visit, even for a weekend." Serenity reached across the table, her hand light but steady as it covered Sophia's. "There's never a perfect time for anything important. You're here now. That's what matters. The cafe hummed around them, baristas calling out orders, the espresso machine hissing, customers tapping away at their laptops or scrolling through their phones. On a wall-mounted television, the morning news rolled through its predictable cycle. Political tensions, economic forecasts, celebrity gossip. The scent of fresh coffee and baked goods wrapped around them like a familiar blanket. Tell me more about Claire's school play, Serenity prompted, taking a careful sip from her cup. You said she landed the lead role? Sophia's face brightened. She's playing Dorothy in The Wizard of Oz. You should see her practicing somewhere over the rainbow around the house. Mark recorded her last rehearsal. I can show you. Her words trailed off as the cafe's television caught her attention. The news had switched to a traffic helicopter shot over Los Angeles. A routine segment showing the morning gridlock. The reporter's voice carried over footage of the 405 freeway, mentioning construction delays near Westwood, where Mark worked. Expect those delays to continue through the afternoon rush hour. Alternative routes are advised for. The screen flashed white. For a fraction of a second, Sophia thought it was a technical glitch. Then the blinding light resolved into something else. As two massive fireballs erupted over the Los Angeles skyline, twin terrifying mushroom clouds climbing into the atmosphere. The helicopter camera jolted violently, the image spinning as the reporter's voice cut off mid-sentence, static. Then, blackness. The morning brew fell silent. Every conversation halted mid-word. Every movement suspended. For 3 long seconds, no one breathed. Sophia felt the world contract to a pinpoint. Sophia let slip a tiny gasp. Her coffee cup slipped from nerveless fingers, shattering against the floor. But she couldn't hear it. All she could see was that burning flower blossoming over her home, over Mark, over Claire. Sophia, her mother's voice seemed to come from miles away. Sophia, look at me. Sophia couldn't move, couldn't blink. At a loss for words, her body had turned to stone while her mind screamed. Around them, the stunned silence fractured. Someone gasped. A man at the counter swore loudly. A barista fumbled for the remote control, frantically changing channels. Each station showed variations of the same nightmare. Emergency broadcasts, confused anchors, footage of the explosion from different angles. What appears to be at least 2 nuclear detonations over Los Angeles. No official statement yet from authorities, advising all residents to shelter in place. Sophia's phone vibrated in her pocket. Her heart leapt. Mark? Claire? But when she pulled it out with trembling fingers, the screen displayed only an emergency alert. National emergency declared. Shelter in place. Await further instructions. She stared at the message, its cold, bureaucratic tone at odds with the catastrophe unfolding. Desperately, she tried calling Mark's number. Nothing. She tried Claire's phone. Nothing again. Each attempt met with the same automated message. All circuits are currently busy. Please try your call again later. That sterile, mechanical voice seemed to mock her panic. All circuits busy. As if this were just another holiday, with too many calls being placed at once. As if her world hadn't just collapsed into ash. Around them, the cafe erupted into chaos. People scrambled for phones, for exits, for any semblance of control. A businessman shouted into his dead cell about evacuations. A college student sobbed openly into her hands. The barista continued flipping channels frantically, as if one might suddenly offer reassurance. Is it just LA? Someone demanded. Are there other cities? My sister's in San Diego, a woman cried. She's not answering. The terrorists might have finally developed a nuke. No, it's gotta be an accident. Nuclear war, man. The Chinese, the Russians. Outside, ancient, long disused air raid sirens began to wail. Through the window, Sophia could see people rushing down the sidewalks, some toward their cars, others seemingly without direction. A police cruiser sped past, lights flashing. Sophia's thoughts whirled like debris in a tornado. Mark and Claire, 12 miles from downtown Los Angeles. Was that close enough to the blasts? Had Mark gotten to Claire's school in time? Were they trying to leave the city or shelter in place? The questions multiplied, each more terrifying than the last. The spell binding Sophia's tongue broke, and she could finally speak. I have to go back, she whispered, then louder. I have to go back to LA. Her mother's grip tightened around her wrist. Sophia, breathe. Think. They need me. Panic clawed at Sophia's throat. I need to find them. Look at the TV, Serenity said firmly. Look, the television now showed aerial footage of highways leading out of Los Angeles. Gridlock, unlike anything Sophia had ever seen. Thousands of vehicles at a standstill, some abandoned as people continued on foot. The military conspicuously absent from every possible scene, advising against attempting to enter the Los Angeles metro area. Radiation concerns as far as 40 miles from the blast sites. National Guard has been activated. Sophia's phone buzzed again with the same emergency alert. National emergency declared. Shelter in place. Await further instructions. I can't just sit here, Sophia hissed, tears finally breaking through her shock. Mom, I can't. Serenity pulled herself up straighter, summoning strength that shouldn't have been possible in her frail body. When she spoke, her voice cut through the cafe's panic with surprising authority. "Listen to me, Sophia Ayala Williams. Your fear wants you to run, but running blind is how people get killed in disasters." She took Sophia's trembling hands in hers. "Breathe first, think second, act third. You taught Claire that, remember? When she gets overwhelmed, the mention of her daughter's name sent fresh pain through Sophia's chest. But she forced herself to inhale deeply. Once, twice. Her mother's eyes held hers, anchoring her to the moment. "Mark is smart," Serenity continued. "He knows to get Claire somewhere safe. He knows you're here with me. You charging into a nuclear disaster zone helps no one. But what if? No what ifs yet. Facts first. What do we know?" Despite herself, Sophia felt her analytical mind begin to engage. There were 2 explosions over Los Angeles. People were leaving the city, but the military does not seem to be reacting yet. There looked like a massive area of LA leveled by the explosion. Good. What else? Roads are jammed. The military will soon be blocking entry. There might be radiation. The reality of that word hit her anew, and she swallowed hard. Communications are overloaded, with everyone trying to check on their loved ones. The news cut to a press briefing where the perky smile of the blonde, blue-eyed, and comely presidential press secretary, incongruent to the chaos erupting, confirmed what everyone already knew. 2 nuclear devices had detonated over Los Angeles. Origin unknown. Casualty estimates pending. Military response underway. The potential for additional attacks could not be ruled out. "And does everyone like my new lip gloss?" the press secretary asked. "I can't just wait here," Sophia whispered. "I can't." Serenity studied her daughter's face. "No, you can't. But you need a plan, not panic, for the next hour as the world unraveled around them." Sophia and her mother remained at their table. The cafe transformed into an impromptu crisis center for the customers. The owner turned up the television volume, distributed free coffee, and allowed people to charge phones on every available outlet. Information trickled in. The blasts had occurred over downtown Los Angeles. Early estimates suggested the devices were relatively small by nuclear standards. Tactical nukes, like the RSM-56 Bulava, rather than strategic nuclear weapons. But devastating nonetheless. Sophia tried every communication method she could think of. Calls, texts, emails, and social media messages. Most failed, but occasionally a text would go through, only to receive no response. She left voice messages that grew increasingly desperate. "I'm coming to find you. Wait for me. I love you both." Outside, the town of San Bernardino transformed. Police directed traffic at intersections. Lines formed at gas stations. The grocery store across the street was mobbed. People hugged strangers, or argued violently about what to do next. And through it all, Serenity remained calm, her presence a counterweight to the mounting hysteria. She helped Sophia gather information, separating facts from rumors, while conserving her limited energy. The radiation reports are mixed, Sophia noted, scanning emergency updates on her tablet. Some areas might be relatively safe, especially with proper precautions. And Mark knows this, Serenity reminded her. He'll get Claire to safety if he can. If he can. The words hung between them, unaddressed. By mid-afternoon, Sophia had made her decision. She would return to Los Angeles, not in blind panic, but with purpose and preparation. Her mother didn't try to dissuade her. She recognized the determination in her daughter's eyes. "I'll be back for you," Sophia promised, as she prepared to leave. "Once I find them, we'll all come back here." Serenity smiled sadly. "I know you will." She pressed something into Sophia's hand, a small silver locket containing a family photo. For luck, the drive that should have taken over an hour stretched before Sophia like an impossible gauntlet. Roads would be clogged. Gas might be scarce. And at the end waited either reunion or devastation. "I love you, Mom," she whispered, embracing Serenity carefully, conscious of her fragility. "Find them," Serenity replied simply. "Be smart. Be safe." As Sophia's car pulled away from the morning brew, Serenity Williams watched from the window. Sophia touched her fingers to the glass in silent farewell, praying that her mother, Serenity, and her daughter, Claire, would forgive her for the choice she'd been forced to make today. Between the mother who was dying and the family who might already be gone. The afternoon shadows grew long as Sophia's car raced along the westbound interstate back to Los Angeles. The main highways heading east had quickly become impassable, choked with the vehicles of fleeing civilians. Radio reports described mass evacuations from areas surrounding Los Angeles, the declaration of martial law, and conflicting radiation warnings. Sophia had expected gridlock all the way, but the lack of any vehicle but hers heading west made the drive that more unsettling. The traffic thinned as she approached LA. The further she drove, the emptier the roads became. She was alone on the freeway. A surreal experience on roadways normally congested at all hours. The emptiness carried its own warning. She was driving toward something everyone else was fleeing. Sophia's GPS had stopped working hours ago, but she didn't need it. 15 years in Los Angeles had etched these routes into her memory. Exit here, turn there, the familiar path home. As she crested the final hill that should have revealed their neighborhood, her headlights illuminated a transformed landscape. Where apartment buildings and shopping centers should have stood, there was absence, rubble, small fires, and just nothing. A perfect circle of annihilation. She pulled to the side of the road, stepping out into air that smelled wrong, like sulfur and ash and things that had no name. The evening was eerily quiet. No sirens, no voices, no wildlife, just the soft tick of her cooling engine and the blood rushing in her ears. Beyond the destruction's edge, buildings remained mostly intact, untouched save for their destroyed windows, as if a giant cookie cutter had stamped down from above, removing only what lay within its circumference. Their apartment had been 3 blocks inside what was now emptiness. Sophia walked forward in a daze, approaching the edge of obliteration. Something crunched beneath her shoes, glass fused with asphalt, transformed by unimaginable heat. The boundary between existence and nothingness was shockingly abrupt. Mark wouldn't have had time to leave home and then driven to Claire's school, she reasoned desperately. He could have left early for his regular gym workout and could have driven straight to her. Her school must be outside this circle. They could still be alive. They must be. The distant growl of engines broke the silence. Headlights swept the devastation as a convoy of military vehicles rumbled into view. Camp Pendleton Marines, in full hazmat gear, disembarked, moving with half-practiced efficiency. One spotted her and approached, face obscured behind a protective mask. "Ma'am, this is a restricted area. You need to evacuate immediately." The faceless Marine barked. "My family," Sophia's voice cracked. "My husband and daughter. They lived here." The soldier's posture remained tense and rigid, clearly on edge. "I'm sorry, ma'am. There were no survivors within the blast radius. Radiation levels here are dangerous. We need to leave now." "But they might not have been home," she insisted. "My daughter's school. It must be outside the blast radius. My husband might have—" "Ma'am?" The soldier cut her off, not unkindly. "Secondary evacuation sites have been established for survivors. Check there. But you can't stay here. It isn't safe." As if to emphasize his point, a radiation detector at his belt emitted a persistent clicking that grew faster as they stood talking. "Where?" she demanded. "Where are these evacuation sites?" Before he could answer, another Marine approached rapidly. "Sir, we've got missile incoming." "What?" said the first Marine. "Bogey confirmed. ETA 2 minutes." The first Marine's demeanor changed instantly. "Everyone back to your vehicles. Move, move, move." Around them, the unit scrambled into motion, abandoning whatever task had brought them to ground zero. "What's happening?" Sophia asked, fear rising anew in her chest. The Marine gripped her arm. "Another missile, headed right for us. We need to go, now." "Another?" The words died in her throat as understanding dawned. This wasn't over. "Now," the soldier urged. "Get in your car and drive east as fast as you can. Don't stop until you're at least 50 miles out." Sophia stumbled back toward her vehicle, moving on autopilot. As she reached for the door handle, some instinct made her look up. There, cutting across the darkening evening sky, was a thin, white line, like a shooting star, moving in slow motion. But unlike a shooting star, it wasn't arcing away. It was descending, the third, markedly larger missile coming to finish what the first two had started. Sophia stood frozen, again at a loss for words, with her hand still extended toward her car door. The Marine shouted something at her, but his words were lost in the strange silence that had enveloped her consciousness. She watched the white line grow brighter and tracked its inevitable path toward the ruined city, toward her. In that moment, Sophia understood with perfect clarity what her mother had tried to teach her that morning. Some forces were beyond human control. Some decisions led only to different versions of the same ending. She thought of Mark and Claire. Whether they had perished already, or had they survived only to face this missile. She thought of her mother, alone in San Bernardino, watching the news and knowing her daughter would never return. Sophia's hand dropped from the car door. The approaching missile reflected in her eyes as she tilted her face skyward. There would be no scream, no lamentation, no running from what had already been decided. There was only the overwhelming weight of understanding. The nightmare wasn't over. It was only beginning.